You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
And it's got so many cool applications, and it's, like you said, launched on Wednesday, so there's so much going on right now and so many different things that you can do to create your sports content the way you see it, the way you like it.
What if I wanted to show my hoo-ha? Could I do that?
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, a Thursday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe and Drake heading up until 2 o'clock. The next 4 hours, we've got you. A lot of stuff to get into and talk about today. You can be a part of the show. 913-912-4810 is the text line. 913-912-4810, the text line. Here's how the show lines up. We'll talk with Craig Stout coming up at 11 o'clock. KC Sports Network, KC Laboratory Podcast. Kent Swanson in Hawaii, apparently. So somebody else who part of the show just decides to jet setting and leave the continental United States. So that's
proud of
cool.
you, Kent.
Yeah, good for you, Kent. Couldn't have done it last week or next week. Had to do it on the specific week that you were scheduled to come on the show. But luckily, Craig Stout, fantastic pinch hitter. I don't care. Well, Kent, I'd rather talk to Craig anyway. It's just don't tell Kent that. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I will tell Kent that. I don't even care.
Oh, yeah. Who does care? I don't know. Craig Stout will join us at 11 o'clock. We will hear from the Kansas City Chiefs today at 1 o'clock. The Chiefs press conferences with OTAs, Phase 3 going on with voluntary OTAs. Next week, 13th through the 15th, will be the mandatory minicamp. So we'll hear from Andy Reid and others. We'll see. Last week, Andy Reid was scheduled, but we did not hear from Andy Reid. But we did hear from Andy Reid this week, at the White House. Doggone it.
Kind of a downgrade at the podium, you think?
Doggone it. Presidential
seal to Chiefs media room?
No, not at all. Not at all, depending on what you find to be diplomatic and presidential.
Got a big Chief seal on the front, I guess.
That's exactly right. When's the last time a Super Bowl was played by a member of the White House? Huh? President ever won the Super Bowl?
I don't think so.
While being a sitting president? No.
Probably not.
You know who won the Super Bowl that was in the White House on Monday? The Chiefs.
Sure, some of them ended up with rings. I'll give it some thought.
Wedding rings, probably.
Let's draft presidents purely on their athletic ability while they were in office.
Were you drafting for basketball or football? Because basketball, I got Abe Lincoln.
Ooh, the height.
First pick.
My left guard, William Howard Taft. Thank you. Done. He might have quick feet. We can put him at tackle.
You'd have to know a whole lot more about the presidents than I do to be able to be a part of this game and a draft. I am going to abstain here. I'll sit this one out and let others weigh in, and I'll just take their word for it.
Injury issues for William Henry Harrison. Availability is an important ability.
That much I would know.
I don't think he's going to be available for very long.
It's one of those, oh, man, what could have been without the injuries?
The injuries, man, it's just...
Without the whole death
tough
thing. Oh,
yeah.
Man, but it was a hell of a 3 months.
I mean, incredible. The peak of WHH, as I call him.
Yes. Text says Teddy Roosevelt, inside linebacker.
I think, that's a good call right there. Thumper.
All right, so...
Cerebral. Good in space.
Is that right?
We'll conquer some land.
Again, taking your word for it. 913-912-4810 is the text line to join us. Again, we'll hear from the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid, and others coming up at 1 o'clock. Tonight at 7 o'clock, it's the Stanley Cup Finals, Game 3, Panthers and Golden Knights. Another big game, 3 in South Florida. Knights up 2-0. And we'll see if the Panthers can try to get back in the series and take care of their home ice. That comes up at 7 o'clock after a best of at 6 o'clock tonight on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Royals off. They head to Baltimore for a 3-game set. Luckily, the Baltimore Orioles suck just like the Royals do. Same success trajectory and path. No, they're very good. And Daniel Lynch will be on the mound tomorrow night. That's an Apple TV game.
Oh, okay.
So, local fans can watch now.
Yeah. Hey, I'd like FDR as a wide receiver. Great wheels.
See, I mean, here's the thing. I was going to go with something along those lines, but I decided not to.
Oh, really? Okay.
For those specific reasons.
That's good. I'm keeping them lighthearted still. We're not getting into really any hot water here, I don't think.
I was going to put him as a running back, though. I wasn't going to put him. It wasn't really the wheels. It was
hard to bring down, too, for sure.
runs over people
Yeah, absolutely.
or rolls over people. Again, it's ridiculous, dude. 913-912-4810. I apologize on Josh's behalf. He goes over to other countries and he feels like he can come back here and just make fun of Americans.
He's the only president to three-peat. I mean, he's a winner.
That's a great point.
Boom.
That's a good point. All right, let's get into the show. The Denver Nuggets may three-peat. They'll have to win their first one to be able to three-peat. They are up.
I'm sorry to
2
cut
games
you off
to-
immediately.
Oh, no,
Did you
what?
see the bottom third on First Take right as we were walking in?
No, I did not.
Are the Nuggets the new Warriors? Can we get one down first, guys? Just one?
Well, they are halfway to their first title.
Right. What are we doing?
I mean, we really like. Well, I am looking. If they're the new Warriors, I'm looking forward to people falling in love with the Nuggets and then in 2 years hating the Nuggets.
Yeah, that will happen. Success will do that.
Yes. Tex said Gerald Ford, starting center for the University of Michigan. So there you go.
I thought there was at least a couple of college football players that ended up being
Again,
president.
that could be totally wrong.
it's a
I
texter.
just read texts and put them out there, and people take them as fact. And if it's something like that, I'll take it as fact. That's fine. I believe this particular texter. Seems like an incredibly smart individual.
Even better, by the way, center, linebacker, and long snapper for
See?
the school's football team in Michigan.
There you go. How about that? He didn't have to have a specific long snapper to go along with. If you snap the ball, snap the ball. Can you snap it long
Exactly.
and short? Yeah, you can do both of those things. All right, so let's get into the show. We'll talk some Chiefs today. There's a number of things I want to get into with the Kansas City Chiefs today. I think, oddly enough, there's a lot of meat on the bone and topics to talk about with the Chiefs today in different news nationally that may, by 1 or 2 degrees separation of Kevin Bacon, that would involve the Chiefs, not Dalvin Cook, who was released by the Minnesota Vikings. The degrees of separation that would involve the Chiefs is the expectation he's going to be a Miami Dolphin. And the Chiefs will then fly to Germany to face off against them. So the expectation is that the Chiefs will face off against Dalvin Cook this year. They were going to, and now it looks like they probably are going to. We'll see. But some other things across the NFL with DeAndre Hopkins, Danielle Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings, that apparently teams are calling Minnesota Vikings about trading for him. They are taking phone calls and listening. They can't get a contract extension done with him right now. Doesn't necessarily mean the Chiefs would be one of the teams that would call, but we know the Chiefs are interested in defensive ends. What would it take to sign him to a long-term extension? Because if you're trading for him, you would have to do that. What would it take to trade for him? A little more difficult now that the draft is already over. Would it take a first rounder? Would the Chiefs be interested in doing that? If they're already going to be talking about extending Chris Jones to a massive contract, do you want to then do that with a defensive end when you just drafted FAU? You've got Karlaftis. You just signed Amenahu. Are you in the market for a Hunter, or would you have been in the market a couple of months ago if they were offering him as a trade, considering the Chiefs did go defensive end in the first round? So that's at least a conversation going on across the NFL with one of the best defensive end edge rushers, younger edge rushers that may be available via trade. And typically those guys aren't available very often. I mean, they are available sometimes in free agency, sometimes via trade, but not as often as you would think. And so that name is out there. But let's get into the NBA. Game 3, the Nuggets get the win, and some historic numbers last night. I mean, all-time historic numbers. Nikola Jokic with the 32, 21, and 10 triple-double. Just the third 30-point, 20-rebound triple-double. Going along with 10 assists. The third one ever in the NBA playoffs. The first one in the NBA Finals, because Wilt and Kareem did that in just the playoffs, not in the NBA Finals, because clearly they're not that good. But Nikola Jokic with that. And Jokic and Jamal Murray became the first pair of teammates to have a 30-point triple-double in a game ever.
In the finals, you mean, right? In the
No.
playoffs. Look,
No.
gotta be. You mean just in game 3?
Any game, anytime, ever. Teammates to have 30-point triple-doubles, and they did that not only in the NBA Finals, not only on the road, but also in a Game 3 with the series tied 1-1. I mean, you're talking about decisive Game 3s, Game 5s, Game 7s when series are tied. It's as big of a moment to come through and play that way with one of the, if not the most underrated duo in the NBA that's probably starting to get their shine because of what they're doing in the playoffs and what Jamal Murray is doing now that he's healthy. Jamal Murray was amazing in the bubble, and then he battled injuries and an ACL, and now healthy in the playoffs again, doing what he did in the bubble. And Jokic just getting better and better and better every year. And maybe locally that's shadowed
It is.
by Christian Brown
It really is.
and the game he had last night. It was unbelievable to watch a game where Murray and Jokic did something that has never been done before in the history of the NBA. And regular season, preseason, playoffs, NBA Finals, doesn't matter. And the storyline being Christian Brown. It's a couple things. One, I think we've become pretty numb to some historic numbers.
Yes, especially from Jokic.
Right.
It's just kind of normal for him.
And like crazy numbers in the NBA Finals and triple doubles because, LeBron did that all the time. And so it sort of became like, oh, okay, yeah, he has 25, 15, and 12. Okay, whatever. It's a triple. Did he win? He didn't win. Blah, blah, blah. So we've seen like points and things like that. And Jamal Murray was phenomenal last night too. But it's the unexpected that happens in these games that gets a lot of the shine. And when you play the way that Christian Brown did, he didn't just hit a couple of big threes. He didn't hit three. But he was 7 of 8 from the field, 15 points, 4 rebounds, had the steal and the breakaway dunk. He was everywhere on the floor and playing defense, and a guy that got 19 minutes last night. And I think it is directly connected to the way that, and this has nothing to do, it doesn't matter where they went to school, I promise you. It matters we're talking about Christian Brown because where he's from and where he went to school, but being from Kansas City and then going to KU. But the other player I'm going to mention doesn't matter where he went to school. To me, it's directly connected to the inability of Malone trusting Michael Porter Jr., that Christian Brown got out there and took advantage of his minutes. I don't care where Michael Porter Jr. would have gone to school, okay, whether it's, UW where he was originally committed to or whatever. He was a lottery pick, and in Game 1, he was a big story. But in Game 2, he disappeared. He was called out by his coach. And in Game 3, after being called out by his coach and disappearing, he was just sort of didn't look like he wanted to be out there. Yeah. It looked like he wanted to find the bench. Like every single whistle, he kept looking over the bench. Because I think he knew how he was playing, and he missed a couple of defensive assignments and rotations where I think it was Max Strus hit a big three, and Michael Porter Jr. was supposed to rotate off of, I don't even know who was down in the corner, because KCP went and helped out at the top of the key. So Michael Porter Jr. was supposed to rotate. Instead, he stayed down near Jokic and was sort of pointing at his guy in the corner while Max Strus caught the ball, as if like letting people know, well, I'm worried about this guy over here. And Strus buries the three, and KCP looks over at Michael Porter Jr. like, hey, it's a rotation, man. You got to come up here. The most dangerous person is the one with the ball and nobody guarding him. He's not going to swing it down to the corner where you're at because he didn't have to, and he's a better three-point shooter than the guy in the corner. So you had that. You had some shots that just weren't even close. He did make the bucket early in the game where it looked like, all right, he got that to go, and maybe that was going to get him going. But it just didn't really look like he wanted to be out there. And Michael Malone put in Christian Brown, and Christian Brown took advantage of that, and he was everywhere. He was busting his butt. He was defending. He was on the floor. He was grabbing rebounds. He's sprinting up and down the floor. He's doing the things that you would expect a player that just simply finds ways to get things done. And, the whole adage of, he's a winner. But those are things that are done by teams that win, by players on teams that win, are the things that Christian Brown did. It's phenomenal, Josh, that 30-point triple-doubles by a teammate, and it's like, yeah, but what about Christian Brown and his 19 minutes of play?
It's the funniest way to possibly look at that game last night. I was thinking the same thing, is that we are seeing this historic thing, especially from Jokic with the 30 and 20, And then you do see Jamal Murray, this healthy version of him that really does look like he was not overinflated by just wait till he's healthy, right? That's a tough spot to be in, not just in terms of your expectations. And there was a story about him, talking to Mike Malone about being damaged goods and if they even wanted him around anymore. There is a lot, and also I just for years listened to Rudy tell me about how good Jamal Murray was or was going to be or whatever, and the injuries continuing to undercut that physically and mentally. It's hard to come back and then to ultimately prove all of that hope right, and he's done that throughout these playoffs. He was stupendous. Jokic is literally rewriting record books.
Yeah.
But it's at least here a little bit. And I think to some extent, for even like Nuggets fans who have seen Jokic and Murray be exceptional, the idea of this being the Christian Brown game is hilarious and not that silly. Because especially when you talk about sort of that intangible winner finds a way to win, toughness, no fear, big moments, all of that, that's always very hard to measure, right? Because it's always a little bit subjective. But who is the guy in this series who actually brought that byline with him, who has been that guy, not just in these playoffs, but also back in the bubble? Jimmy Butler is, he's just the guy who's going to make something happen in the playoffs and big games and whatever. And when Christian Brown made that shot through Jimmy Butler's chest, you go, all right, okay, like whatever that gene is, and I can't remember, I heard this clip. I think it might have been Richard Jefferson talking about the finals and not wanting the shot in the corner for the Heat and just sort of watching everything else, or not for it would have been for the Heat at the time. Whatever it was, but like this idea that you have a lot of professional players who have put up a lot of shots in practice and a lot of shots in big games, and some of them do sort of metabolize that stress differently. It can be corny. I understand, but if you are Christian Brown in that moment, you're an hour and a half removed from playing college ball, which you didn't play for a terribly long time. How old is Christian Brown at this point? I should probably know.
Played 4 years though, or at least he was in college for that long.
He's 22. He's 22. I thought he might have still been just barely of drinking age, but you have seen him at that highest level for a relatively small peak of that, right? And then Jimmy Butler is the guy between you and that bucket, and there's no fear, no hesitation whatsoever. It's just a tremendous moment of like, yep, I'm here and I belong here on this stage. It's really, really cool.
Let's hear from Christian Brown post-game on the court after the game was over. They talked with Jokic. They talked with Jamal Murray. SVP had Aaron Gordon on, and every single person that they talked to got asked about Christian Brown. Well, let's actually hear from Christian Brown post-game on the court after his big night.
Christian, you all were very unhappy with the way that Game 2 went, but more than that, the way you guys played in that Game 2. How did you get right to get this win, particularly in the second half?
I mean, just taking possession by possession. Obviously, we made a lot of mistakes last game. I think we minimized our mistakes this game. Didn't close it how we wanted to close it, but a win's a win.
Nikola Jokic, a 30-20-10 triple-double. Jamal Murray, a triple-double tonight. What's it like playing with those two and watching their greatness?
I mean, they make me look a lot better, obviously. So just getting to share the court with them, just all the guys. Obviously, that's who they are, and that's what we expect from them. So it's nothing different than it's been, all year. Just to see them do that on this stage is obviously great.
For you, you've talked all season long about how this team lets you be you. What version of you did we see tonight?
I mean, like I said, that was just, cutting, making plays off the other guys. Like I said, the credit goes to Nikola and Jamal for getting me open and just let me be me. And that's what I appreciate about this team. And we're 2 wins away for what our goal was, and we haven't done anything yet. We're almost there.
How good did it feel to get that steal and then finish it with a dunk in transition and yell at the Heat fans a little bit?
I mean, it felt great. Like I said, those are the plays I like to make. And just be able to yell and show my personality a little bit. Obviously, what I love to do. So, like I said, we haven't done anything yet. That's a win we really needed. And just to win it in the way we did, winning on defense, obviously feels great.
Big win, CB. Congrats.
Yes, man. Thank you.
So there you go. Big game for Christian Brown. Big game for the Denver Nuggets. They get the win. They are up 2-1. Miami Heat shoot just over 30% in that game from behind the arc. So they've shot 30% in 2 games. They lost. They shot 48% in 1 game. They won. As I talked about, if they shoot what they did against the Bucks and the Celtics, they'll win the series. If they don't, they'll lose, and they are not right now. So they're going to have to do that in 3 of the next 4 games if they want to win this series. But stranglehold on that for Denver, getting home court advantage back. They now have home court advantage again. The series started in Game 2 because there was a team that won on the road, so that's good. Also, as we take a break, I do appreciate Jeff Van Gundy because he's the first person that I've heard nationally talk about something I've been harping on for a long time, and it was quickly dismissed by Mark Jackson. But I think it was Jokic that dropped a pass and KCP got fouled, and he said, why is it that if you throw the ball to somebody and they get fouled, shouldn't you get an assist if they knock down both free throws? And Mark Jackson, no, that's dumb. That's not how we've done it. And
I
then,
thought of you.
And then Jeff Van Gundy was like, well, we didn't have a three-point line. We didn't used to have a three-point line. And then Mark Jackson with the line of the night said, yeah, well, we used to only have two broadcasters. That was great. But Van Gundy, finally somebody saying what I have been harping on, that if you drop a dime to that guy and he gets a layup, you get an assist. But if you drop a dime to that guy and it's so good that the other guy has to foul him to keep him from scoring, you get nothing for that. You get nothing for that. But you did the same thing, only it's even better because that other team just got a team foul and a personal foul. But you get nothing.
I think Grant Guerin those runs either way.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
Summer's here, and when you're looking for tickets to your favorite events, look no further than Tickets for Less. Whether you need tickets to see the Royals, Sporting, or the Current, or you want to plan ahead with seats to see Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, TicketsForLess.com is your go-to source for great tickets at the best price. At Tickets for Less, you get fully transparent pricing without added fees at checkout. Plus, save a little extra when you use promo code 810 at checkout today. Simply enter code 810 at TicketsForLess.com to save.
When you need a battery, it's Wholesale Batteries. Since 1977,
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, and Drake. We head up until 2 o'clock. We'll talk with Craig Stout, KC Sports Network, kcsn.substack.com. We'll talk with him coming up at 11 o'clock, and then we'll hear from the Chiefs coming up at 1 o'clock, 913-912-4810. A lot of presidential discussion.
Excellent.
Yeah. Texas, Richard Nixon, point guard or pinch runner, guaranteed to lead the league in steals.
Pretty good.
Eisenhower's a linebacker. Eisenhower starting running back as well at West Point.
Eisenhower, I think I knew.
Taft got stuck in a bathtub. He was so big, so great offensive lineman.
He had great size. Weirdly, this is the second time William Howard Taft has come up in a radio discussion with me in the last 2 days. Talked about Sterling yesterday. Don't know how we got there.
And there's some other mean ones I'm not going to read.
Sure.
There's some other ones that I'm not sure radio appropriate, so I'm just going to err on the side of caution with those. But I've read them, texters. Just so you know, thumbs up. I laughed.
I think Woodrow Wilson, probably linebacker, just for the phrase, like, lay the wood. Yeah. I mean, boom, that right there.
Just lay the Wilson.
Maybe not.
I don't know.
As good.
913-912-4810.
James A. Garfield would be good, but he would never play on Monday nights. He hates Mondays.
Yeah. Was that worse than mine, I think?
No, I know. Yeah, absolutely. No,
Okay.
you can't do worse, I don't think, than a Garfield joke.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Moving on.
So,
Miller to fill more gaps, am I right?
next week, the Cincinnati Reds will be in town. That includes Ellie De La Cruz.
Hope you can keep your Calvin Coolidge.
Who I have been talking about for, I don't know, a couple months now, Drake, that we've been discussing Ellie De La Cruz and what he's going to do at the big league club, and watching and paying a little bit of attention to him. And, boy, the last month or so, we've talked a lot about him since he's been hitting home runs that are 115 miles an hour and doubles that are 116 miles an hour and et cetera, and running fast and throwing hard and doing all these toolsy things and being 6'5" and fun to watch and an exciting player. And already this year, in his 2 games that he's played, he's got the fastest home to third time already in the triple that he hit last night. And he has the hardest hit baseball for the Reds this year in the home run that was the moonshot of 460. That was 3 rows away from going out of the park. John Sadak, the TV play-by-play, our man Tommy Thrall, the radio play-by-play of the Reds, who we're going to have on the show next week when they're in town to talk about how lucky he is to get to watch what could be, next to Ohtani, the most exciting player in baseball. It's only 2 games in, and so that may seem like it's an exaggeration. But when you're talking about just simply exciting, it doesn't mean best player. Ohtani, that would mean the same thing. But Ohtani's the exciting and best player, where you're just like, I don't know what you're going to see with this guy. So Ellie De La Cruz in his first at-bat yesterday, after going 2 for 4 with 2 walks in his debut, he steps up to the plate in game number 2 in the first inning with a man on. And, of course, he does this.
Tennis match, golf tournament silence.
Anticipation to see what...
Oh, goodness! That ball had a family! In game 2, his first home run. A 2-run bomb. The hardest hit ball by a Red this year. That was nearly 115. It brought everyone to their feet.
That ball had a family is a dynamite call, is just a brilliant call. Also to know when he hit it that it wasn't just going to be a high fly ball that went to the warning track. Because if you say that ball had a family, that thing better go.
Which means you can't have that one preloaded. That's a reaction in the moment.
Yes, and you know it's going to be that far because the bat speed, the power he generates for being as thin as he is. Like, he's not a bulking, huge Ortiz. Mo Vaughn looked like he was going to hit the ball 700 feet every time he swung and got a hold of it. And De La Cruz just simply turns And it's not like sometimes you'll see like, oh, he got his arms extended. He got his arms in, hips turned on the baseball. You know, I love when you see like the slow motion in that, you know, as a left-hander, so his left elbow is almost rubbing against his oblique, and just all that compacted power, even as long as his arms are, and just hits it 460 feet, and it's just absurd.
Have you paused it on which is where the ball was landing? This thing is barely a strike. Barely. It is up and in, and it would have been a strike on the, you know, this little pitch tracks thing in real time.
Yeah, it depends.
But, and I think, I'm going to have to scroll back up here and check this other one. But I think that first hit that was another 112 miles per hour. Let me just double check. Not a strike. Not even close. This thing, the catcher had to leave his crouch to come up after what was that first hit that went 112 off the bat. It is genuinely a bizarre thing to watch. The closest modern example is Aaron Judge bursting onto the scene and go, oh, that's a giant who can hit anything. But you're right, even with De La Cruz, he doesn't have that obvious bulk that Aaron Judge has. He seems like a math problem. It's impossible.
All that discussion yesterday about what it means to barrel a ball. I think he double barreled it.
He barreled it. He sweet spotted it. He hit it 115 off the bat for Elly De La Cruz, and that thing flew. It said it was 458. I don't know. I think they're shorting him like 50 feet.
It legit seems like it.
But also imagine if that didn't go as high, because that thing brought rain by the time it came down 460. Like if he hits that just a little bit lower launch angle, I mean, it's in the river.
And it's just such an easy swing, despite, like you said, it being inside. His hands are in. It's smooth. And you don't even realize, I think, until he kind of falls into the plate with his back foot. You go, oh, he must have swung that bat pretty hard. It's unbelievable.
And I like that, there's a lot of fun being had in baseball today, whereas the next time he was up, he would have been hit in the back or the leg because of his immediately slamming the bat down, looking at the dugout, throwing up the 2 4s because he wears number 44 for the Reds, which also, by the way, is pretty freaking brash.
Yeah.
To be a Reds player, a rookie, and say, I want Eric Davis's number. I want number 44. I want to wear that number as a Red who every year was going to be 30-30 and who, when he was up at the plate, you'd better watch because you didn't know what he was going to do. He was going to hit a home run or he could hit a triple or a double, whatever it was. And De La Cruz is turning into that guy. And then when he's playing defense, you know he's got one of the strongest arms in baseball. And again, as we said, in back-to-back at-bats, first inning, he hit the ball hardest than any Red has hit the ball this year, and one of the hardest hits in all of baseball this year. And the second at-bat, he had the fastest home-to-third speed on the triple that he hit. He just back-to-back at-bats. That's the speed, that's the power, and the fact that in his first game, he drew 2 walks. In his first game, when they talked about the issue with him was him being a free swinger, him and the strike zone judgment, swing decisions. That's what he had to work on. And he starts out like 1 of 22 in AAA this year after coming back from a hamstring injury that, kept him on the IL early. He gets healthy. He goes like 1 of 22 with tons of strikeouts. And it's like, until this guy figures out the strike zone and not striking out that much, he can't play. And then he just stopped. Well, not stopped striking out, but stopped striking out at the clip he was and was walking and was laying off pitches and had the discipline and the strike zone judgment. I heard Buster Olney this morning was talking about O'Neal Cruz, the 6'8" shortstop for the Pirates that made his debut last year, that everybody was like, this guy's unbelievable. You see how hard he's hitting the ball, how hard he's throwing the ball. The guy's 6'8" or whatever he is as a shortstop. This is ridiculous. And the question, I think it was from Sherman or Garrett Dieter this morning to Buster Olney. It was like, so what's the difference? And because we saw another Cruz last year, O'Neal Cruz, Elly, although it's De La Cruz, but another guy who's, last part of the name is at least Cruz, not necessarily the last name, but O'Neal Cruz made his debut last year, and he's like, the difference is O'Neal Cruz strikes out a lot. He's a free swinger. He's got an on-base percentage before he got hurt this year of like 290, which under 300, which I don't know how you can be a young guy and have an under 300 on-base percentage and think you're going to be good. I joke, I kid, but he strikes out a lot. And Elly De La Cruz, first at bat in the big leagues laid off 2 breaking balls that were low and inside to a lefty and just took a walk, which is not something that you would typically see when you've got a guy probably amped up in his first at bat wanting to hit the ball 500 feet, and he does that. I can't wait to watch him next week out at Kauffman Stadium. And it's unfortunate that what gets me to Kauffman Stadium this year is my son being a part of the junior lineup on a Sunday and Ellie De La Cruz on a weeknight next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But such is reality right now of the Royals. And they probably don't care why you're going out to the park because now they're having Chiefs night.
Yeah.
Unlike what?
Travis
June 12th
Kelce
or
throwing
something.
the
So-
first pitch.
Is he really?
He gets another shot at it. Yeah,
Okay.
they just announced that today, I think. Not De La Cruz related, but did you see the walk-off by Will Benson in that same game
did.
for the Reds?
I did.
Probably the coldest immediate, like not even bat throw, just the entire scene of the "This is my city" Spike the bat yelling. He was facing the dugout about 5 feet away from home when the ball was landing. He made a meal out of it, and it just I got jealous, honestly. Because it just feels like the Royals are really far removed from having a moment as cool as like any of the last 10 that the Reds have produced in the last few days. And, I mean, at least you get to go see a cool traveling show right now because Cincy seems like it's on fire.
I don't know if maybe that was like
not a pun about New York or anything.
I didn't know
that was
if that's what you were going with.
I said it and then
Sorry.
I thought, well, that wasn't a pun, but should I explicitly say it wasn't one? So no, I appreciate the opportunity for me to just admit that words aren't really my good thing.
Yep. Will Benson with the walk-off, so back-to-back walk-offs against the Dodgers for a Reds team now that is playing some really good baseball, really fun baseball too, and some younger guys coming up. McLean, one of the top prospects. India is really good. And now Ellie De La Cruz, one of the more exciting players in baseball. I thought it was also cool that the Dodgers, who was it that Nick Robertson made his Major League debut last night, and the first batter he went up against was Ellie De La Cruz, and he struck him out. 3 pitches, bing, 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 strikeout. That was fun. Second game ever for Ellie De La Cruz, one of the more exciting prospects. Nick Robertson's making his debut for the Dodgers, and throws it right by De La Cruz 3 times. That was an interesting matchup. Yes, what I'm saying is I watched more Reds baseball last night than I did Royals.
Do you think when Cincy comes to Kansas City this time, they're going to try to call it like Hella Cruz Stadium? Burrowhead's a lot smoother.
Yeah.
Jabroni behavior regardless. And also, would anyone care?
It's
that might be the sad thing.
De La Croftman.
De La Croftman's pretty good.
De La Croftman Stadium. We see y'all at De La Croftman. Mike Hilton doesn't have the same ring.
No,
we see y'all at Burrowhead.
I wouldn't want to have to defend it this time,
Croftman.
though. I think De La Croftman is what they should just call it for a little bit.
He hadn't even played here.
No.
All right. We'll take a timeout.
I don't have any other puns or any. You want to pick another president?
Yeah, there's probably some more texts about presidents somewhere along the line.
Can we rename Kauffman after a president? William Kauffman Stadium. There we go. Nailed it. This thing on?
Mm-hmm.
I might turn it off soon.
Let's see here.
Looking forward to Jordan Lyles versus Ellie De La Cruz.
Oh, boy.
I may show up to that game just, as the texter said, I may go to that game just because I'm there to watch Ellie De La Cruz. I may go to that game because that would be then Jordan Lyles would be going for 0-14.
Yeah, I mean, he's working on an entire. So. He's working on. He's coming after those Lions from 2008. Is that right?
Attack you. Even the Orioles in the 80s and their 21-22 start. We'll take a timeout.
They can't Gerald afford that.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
So maybe if we weren't able to turn his mic on, we wouldn't call Bickmer Electric. We would just simply let that short in the wiring go and not turn on his microphone. But if you were, I don't know, say working on a different show and you wanted microphones on and they didn't work, give Bickmer Electric a call. I'm not sure. Maybe you've got a studio at your house, a podcast, whatever it might be. More than 20 years in the industry, Bickmer Electric, your locally owned and operated one-stop electrical contractor, small jobs to big jobs. Bickmer team knows how to take care of your commercial and residential electrical needs. Hire a professional. Make sure the job is done the right way the first time. You want to give them a call, 913-313-6751. That's 913-313-6751. You get the virtual walkthrough, and you get the all the different things that they can help you out with in different choices and itemizing the job that they can, at least the choices that are there in the budget that they can fit it in, which was great because, sometimes you want to spend a little bit more over on this particular project in this room. Maybe you want to spend a little bit less if it's something maybe down in an unfinished part of the basement for some reason. They give you all of those different options. It's cool, easy to work with. It was a great experience with Bickmer Electric. BickmerElectric.com, BickmerElectric.com. Electric.com. Give them a call, 913-313-6751. See how easy it is to get an estimate and that virtual walkthrough, and they'll help you out with everything you need, whether that be commercial or residential. It's BickmerElectric.com.
Maybe your field is teaching, or maybe you're farming.
talking about Chiefs night out at Kauffman Stadium. And I didn't put two and two together in that it was, June 12th that Chiefs night is taking place on Monday with a team from Cincinnati in town. The Royals do that on purpose, having the Chiefs while they're playing a team from Cincinnati to celebrate Chiefs night and the world champions. I don't know that Reds players will really give a bleep, but it would be kind of funny, when all of the Cincinnati Reds fans are going to be watching that game and they're going to see the broadcast about Travis Kelce throwing out the first pitch. It's Chiefs night here at Kauffman Stadium, and they're facing off against the Reds.
The last day of OTAs, right? So that's why
it's the day before mandatory minicamp starting.
Oh, that's what I meant.
So everybody will be back in town.
Here.
The 13th would be the start of the mandatory minicamp. So it's mandatory.
And
so you do it June 12th, and it's a team from Cincinnati.
The Royals release here says that Travis Kelce will be throwing out the first pitch, but it's going to be at a target of a dunk tank with the mayor of Cincinnati sitting in it, which is a really bizarre, very specific thing for them to put on, but it should be a great time.
I don't know that he would agree to that. Kelce would, but I don't know that the jabroni would agree to doing that.
He showed up for the schedule release video. He's not completely shied away, but yeah, that would be...
I don't think he would then fly to Kansas City to get dunked on in
You know
a
what?
tank.
Here's what I'll say. I'll do it. I'll put on a suit, maybe give me a little, just a pin that just says Mayor of Cincinnati. No one will know the difference.
You volunteer as tribute.
I do. That's exactly what I do here. I volunteer as the Mayor of Cincinnati as tribute.
Mahomes, Kelce, and Andy Reid will be out there, plus more, and the first 20,000 fans get a rally towel that, quite frankly, is pretty sick.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I really like this towel. I mean, one, I want to go out there because I want to watch Ellie De La Cruz. Kind of fun that it's a Chiefs night, but that towel is pretty awesome. It's that's one of the more one of the cooler gifts that I've seen as a giveaway. Corey would not consider that a towel because it's a giveaway, but still, I would want that.
Here's a question about it though. The sponsor, I can't remember exactly what Corey's rules were, but the sponsor on that one, I think, is just kind of the Chiefs. Like I didn't see another logo of any sort.
At least on the graphic they released, there is no logo. It says greetings from Kansas City, and the top half is blue, bottom half is red, and says home of the world's greatest fans. It's got Chiefs and Royals on the back. It's the same thing, sort of Chiefs on the top, Royals on the bottom. Top red, bottom blue. It's pretty cool, but I didn't see a logo.
So I think that to me is what it feels like, is that, again, if there's a big sponsor logo on it, you can then begin to litigate. But I think this one's clear even by Corey standards.
No, it's a giveaway. It doesn't count. You cannot use that as a towel.
I do forget that if you just hand something to Corey, he will throw it on the ground and then spit at you. I do not even have the time to bend over and pick that up, which is strange because you just handed it to him.
You also forget that when we went out to Kauffman Stadium for, a kind of an 8-10 night with all of us, and we sat upstairs, Corey's daughter said, "Where are we going? I've never used the escalator at Kauffman Stadium before." So, yeah.
The longest family-owned restaurant in Kansas City is Dixon's Famous Chili.
weeks. So I appreciate you and I being the more responsible adults in the room.
Yes, I mean, clearly we are the most responsible individuals possible. Boy, that I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I came out.
Yeah. Boy, that's just because we're the most responsible in the room does not make us very responsible. That's
low bar
yes,
to clear.
It's
Very
like,
low bar to
you're the smartest guy in the room. Well, then choose a different room then. Craig Stout is our guest, kcsn.substack.com, KC Laboratory Podcast. Okay, so we find ourselves to be very comedic responsible at the, making fun of Josh and Ken Swanson, but responsible for how good the Chiefs' offensive line is. You've done a great job. Last time we talked to you a few weeks ago was about Raising Heck, the Andy Heck series that you're going through, and you've got a couple of more additions to that, and you're still studying that. Are you gleaning anything? Are you finding anything, learning anything from this studying of how Andy Heck teaches the techniques of what we see from offensive linemen, the things he focuses on and emphasizes for Chiefs fans and the diehard football fans when we talk about how good of a coach Andy Heck is as an offensive line? What are you seeing and just how good he is?
Oh man, I think he's a perennially underrated coach that I think really only gets credit amongst interior offensive line circles, offensive tackle circles. Like, they know he's good, but he's not necessarily listed amongst the greats. But he's really brought to light a lot of teachings from Andy Reid and everything in that offense. We know how much Andy Reid evolves the offense from year to year. Obviously with adding Patrick Mahomes, changing the types of weapons every single year recently, it changes the offense. And having an offensive line coach that can not only adapt to that, getting the ball out quicker, dropping deeper in the sets, trying to do more vertical sets, trying to defend against different types of looks that different defenses are going to bring. The task is on him to basically execute at a high level all the time without fail, because the only time you notice offensive line play is typically when it's bad. And Andy Heck does a really good job of masking a lot of that, preparing his guys for, bad situations that they're put in, having to deal with different defensive coordinators and the exotic looks that they're bringing, different rush plans. He does such a good job of preparing his offensive linemen for every single scenario that's put on the table in front of them. And as I'm digging through this and as I'm learning the way that he drills some of these techniques and things like that, and how he, kind of approaches things from an offensive line perspective, I just have a brand new level of respect for a coach that I already thought was really good.
Yeah, I've talked about before, and I think you and I may have already talked about it plenty of times, because I feel like the coaching staff for the Chiefs, and it trickles down from Andy Reid, what he expects. We were talking with Adam Teicher on Tuesday, and I appreciated hearing from Connor Embry last Thursday, because he was talking about sort of the expectation of, as he was coming up in the Chiefs organization and doing different things, and what that level is of things you need to get done, because Andy Reid demands such things, and he coaches the coaches. And so the Chiefs players have the luxury and the benefit of being able to be coached by people that are expected to be coaching at a high level. And Andy Heck certainly is a part of that. And the players have to go out and do it. So it's not like the Chiefs are just grabbing, 53 guys off the street like Todd Haley talked about, and then they're turning them into stud players. You've got to have guys that can go out and do the job. But how much do you think players benefit from an Andy Heck and an Andy Reid? Say, for instance, Creed Humphrey voted the number one center, listed as the number one center from Pro Football Focus entering the 2023 season. I am not saying, well, Creed Humphrey is just a product of Andy Heck and Andy Reid. Creed Humphrey's pretty damn good and has his own talents, but how much do you think they benefit, and Andy Heck and Andy Reid can maximize and bring out the best in a Creed Humphrey, in a Trey Smith, in an Andrew Wiley, guys like that?
I do think those first two guys that you mentioned, not trying to slight Andrew Wiley here, but those first two guys that you mentioned, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, the offenses that they were coming out of were definitely different. They were not necessarily pro-level offenses. Yes, Lincoln Riley is fun at Oklahoma when Creed Humphrey was there, but A lot of what they did wasn't necessarily traditional pass sets. They were doing a lot more, gap scheme stuff. There was a lot on the plate for the defenses that they were going up against, and so it made some of their lives a little bit easier. Like Creed Humphrey would routinely pull from the center position to pick up a pass rushing defensive end, like pulling all the way around at Oklahoma. That doesn't happen very often in the NFL, and I say very often because Andy Reid did it once this year. So, of course, there's caveats to everything here. But I do think that Andy Heck and the way that he goes through his drills, this is the most important time of the year for Andy Heck's offensive lines, is OTAs, mini camps, training camps, because he's talked about it multiple times in some of the clinics and the interviews and things like that he's done. When these guys come off the field during the game, he likes to quiz them, like quizzing Orlando Brown Jr. of, hey, what drill was that allowed you to hit that move on that guy or protect that guy? And being able to rattle off, it was this drill that we did in June, and it was just hammered into our brains that this is how it needs to be. That's the sort of stuff that he's getting the most out of these guys. So guys like Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, coming from these offenses that aren't necessarily like for an Andy Reid offense and what he wants to do, having the ability to drill those guys, have them pick it up, and utilize their special talents for what they have is so important. We saw Creed Humphrey at the Senior Bowl, the year that he was coming out, and he had a little bit of trouble against power rushers on the interior. The pocket got collapsed routinely against him on one-on-ones, even in some team stuff. It was a little bit of a problem, and it made me be maybe a little lower than I probably should have been on Creed Humphrey. He gets into Andy Heck's system. Andy Heck says, hey, here's how you defend the bull rush. Here's how you defend this sort of stuff. And his ability to pick it up, translate, put it on the field immediately, that's a credit to Creed, but it's also Andy Heck's teachings getting him to that point. So it really is the two of those things blending together into these all-pro offensive linemen, essentially.
Yeah, it's interesting because, that's fascinating. You talk about Creed Humphrey and maybe some of the struggles there at the Senior Bowl, because he was I noted this on Tuesday when the ranking came out that, Creed Humphrey, number 1 in the NFL, he was the number 3 center taken in the draft. I mean, Landon Dickerson is now playing guard because, Jason Kelce, who's the number 2 center in the NFL, is still playing center for the Philadelphia Eagles. So Landon Dickerson, good enough to slide over to guard, and he was taken early second round. And then right before the Chiefs selected Creed Humphrey, the Green Bay Packers took Josh Myers. Now, different things that, scouts and coaches find in different players, but they chose Josh Myers. Chiefs went with Creed Humphrey, and apparently the Chiefs were pretty damn relieved that when a center was taken off the board that it was not Creed Humphrey. But it's just interesting looking at the top 5 of those rankings, Creed Humphrey a second rounder, and then Jason Kelce and Corey Linsley are older players that were drafted late in their particular drafts, but they're making a lot of money. And then you've got rounding out the top 5 as a first-rounder and a first-rounder. I mean, it's not only that they found Creed Humphrey and he's turned out to be the number 1 center in the NFL. They found him late in the second round, and so many things that I think we can credit Brett Veach for. I don't know. It's weird. Like, I feel like I fall in this category of waffling on Creed Humphrey sometimes. Sometimes I feel like, man, does he get enough respect around Kansas City and Brett Veach? Then I'm like, no, he does, because people love Creed Humphrey and they know how good he is, and we talk about the rankings and things like that. It's odd. I feel like he's so good that in year 3 for him, somehow it's just become a given as, okay, center's taken care of. You got one of the best there. Let's look around everywhere else. What's the issue at wide receiver? What about left tackle? Yeah. Like, we're not talking about center or guard at all. We're not talking about those positions that are taken care of. And maybe that's why I feel sometimes he gets overlooked, is because we don't ever really have to talk about him that much because he's just freaking good.
Yeah, and on top of that, he was added at the same time as Joe Thuney and as Trey Smith in that same offseason.
And the trade for Orlando Brown. Yeah, you're right.
And the trade for Orlando Brown. So the remaking of the entire offensive line, you just kind of toss him in there with that, where it's just like, yeah, he's really good and all that. Same goes with Joe Thuney. Like, you look at all these rankings and lists and everything like that, Joe Thuney's near the top of all of them. And I believe I said this the last time I was on the show, but when you watch some of the Andy Heck clinics, you'll see more recent tape and stuff like that, and it's like Orlando Brown Jr., he's looking at Lucas Niang, he's showing stuff from Creed, he's showing stuff from Trey, Nick Allegretti, Andrew Wiley, and that's about the first hour. And I got to the point where I was going, I wonder where all the Joe Thuney tape is. And then he spent the last half an hour basically showing Joe Thuney doing everything near perfectly throughout everything. So, I mean, we kind of forget sometimes that group of guys was all brought in together, and they all played at such a high level that even a guy like Orlando Brown Jr., who isn't necessarily as well regarded in Kansas City as these other guys, but a guy like Orlando Brown Jr. that made multiple Pro Bowls in Kansas City, he's got 4 straight now, but as a left tackle, that we were looking at that guy like, well, maybe it's time to replace him, even though he was a Pro Bowl left tackle. I mean, like, it really speaks to the quality of the player that they were able to add during that offseason to kind of flip this thing around and turn it into what it was. I know that we joke all the time about Andy Reid not letting what happened happen again in that Super Bowl where you're so deep into your depth chart and everything's not what you want it to be. Yes, that's definitely the case, but it is a hat tip and a credit to Brett Veach, Andy Heck, and those players for coming in and performing at such a high level that now it's almost a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Craig Stout is our guest, kcsn.substack.com. I like that, the set it and forget it. They're there. You just simply talk about other things and places that maybe the Chiefs need to improve at. That left tackle spot, Bill Barnwell from ESPN earlier this week, or actually last week in NFL Live, we played the clip earlier this week because it was from the weekend, that they were talking about the offseason, and Bill Barnwell talked about, this is the first time a Super Bowl champion has replaced both left tackles. It's never happened before. But he talked about Juwan Taylor on the right side and Donovan Smith on the left side, and he's theorizing that, the offensive line this year is going to be better than it was a year ago. And Mina Kimes brought up an interesting point in that, Donovan Smith, while he had the rough season last year, the hope is that he returns to, the 2020, 2021 form. And she talked about how injured that offensive line was and playing next to left guards that were sort of interchangeable throughout the season. Multiple different guys played left guard at certain times where Donovan Smith was also playing through injuries. How much do you think that will benefit then Donovan Smith, the point she made of now he gets Joe Thuney playing next to him? That's just going to be a constant. How much do we look at and say, maybe we're underestimating what Donovan Smith, how much better he could be this year than a year ago because you're just setting him next to one of, if not the second best behind only the Eagles' interior offensive lines in NFL?
I mean, that definitely helps.
Yeah.
It definitely helps. I will say this before I dive into all of this. Donovan Smith, I'm curious to see how he looks late in the rep. Or 2 years ago, I know that's what everybody kind of references, and that he was just playing at a really high level, an elite level. Tom Brady was getting the ball out ultra quick, one of the quickest in the league that year. So he's not having to protect as long. However, that being said, Donovan Smith is a far more technical offensive tackle than Orlando Brown Jr. was. That's not trying to slight Orlando Brown Jr. He did things a different way, and Andy Heck cultivated that a little bit. Tried to change it initially, and then went, no, you know what? We're going to let this go. You just do what you need to do to try and eat this up. Donovan Smith is going to be a far more technical tackle. And over the past 2 years, with Orlando Brown Jr. and with Andrew Wiley out there, the Kansas City Chiefs went from a team that asked their offensive tackles to offer a lot of help on the B gap, making sure you had a strong inside hand to make sure that the quickest path to the quarterback, basically through the interior of the offensive line, was protected. And so they would offer a lot of help for their guards with their offensive tackles. I think everybody, if you remember back to Eric Fisher, you remember back to Mitchell Schwartz, there was a lot of checking inside before kicking out vertically up the arc. Kansas City Chiefs over the past 2 years went to more angle sets where they weren't asking their offensive tackles to do that. They weren't asking them to check back inside and help the guards. Part of that is because you had guys like Orlando Brown Jr. and Andrew Wiley who you wanted their sole focus being, hey, protect the outside, don't worry about the inside, we got this. But the other part of that is because you had an elite interior offensive line. You didn't need to offer that help anymore. So from that perspective, with the Bucs last year and asking Donovan Smith to kind of handle the B and the C gap, essentially, and saying, hey, you got to handle both of these. You got to check both of these. And even Juwan Taylor in Jacksonville was having to do a lot of inside hand stuff with the right guard over there playing from that right tackle position. I am curious to see if Andy Reid and Andy Heck just basically come out and say, hey, listen, we still have this elite interior offensive line this year. Don't worry about it. We've got it. Yeah, you're going to be checking back inside very rarely. If that's the case, Jawan Taylor certainly's got the athleticism to get up the arc and stay on an island and all that from a right tackle position, but that might be the thing that Donovan Smith needs to be able to protect later in the rep, needs to be able to protect up the arc a little bit more because he's not having to check back inside. He's not having to help that left guard. So, yeah, I agree with Mina in that point because you've got an all-pro left guard there that just kind of does everything right. They pick everything up. Protections are communicated properly, all of that stuff. I do think that Donovan Smith will be better this year. It just remains to be seen. Is he going to be so much better that the Kansas City Chiefs believe that they've got a strong left tackle, or are they still going to have to keep a tight end in? Are they going to have to chip with a running back? Either way, it does seem like it's only one position instead of both offensive tackle positions like it was last year. So, yes, I can see how you come to the conclusion very quickly that this offensive line is better this year than it was last year.
Craig Stott is our guest, kcsn.substack.com. I want to talk about the pass catchers, not necessarily receivers, but pass catchers, because the receiving corps has been talked about a lot ad nauseum. But Pro Football Focus put out some rankings of the best receivers, top 10 in different situations, in third and fourth down, red zone, and then working out of the slot. Some interesting things here. Third and fourth down, Travis Kelce's number 3 in the NFL, and it's just receiving. It's not just wide receivers, but he's number 3 in the NFL on third and fourth down production level behind Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey at number 2. Red zone, it's George Kittle, Austin Eckler, Mike Gesicki, Jamar Chase, and then Jerick McKinnon comes in at number 5, which is interesting, but also maybe not necessarily a surprise because of all the touchdowns he had. And then working out of the slot, when we're talking about a tight end, but working out of the slot, Kelce is number 6 most productive pass catcher in the NFL last year in the slot. And that sort of is that whole, receiver versus tight end thing. But there were, out of the 10, 20, 30 different players that could have been ranked, there were 3 running backs on that list, McCaffrey, Eckler, and Jerick McKinnon. And I thought that was pretty fascinating because it was a signing last year that was kind of like, okay, cool, they got Jerick McKinnon late. And then he did what he did this past regular season. And then it felt like McKinnon was being courted by different players on different teams, and he re-signs here in Kansas City. Maybe it's an underrated signing or an overlooked signing, or maybe people appreciate what Jerick McKinnon brings to the table. But I thought that was fascinating because he gets so much credit for pass protection, does McKinnon, and we talk about that in connecting with Orlando Brown and maybe even helping out Donovan Smith. But we know he's a good receiver. I just didn't realize he was the 5th most productive red zone target in the NFL last year.
I mean, and when you think about it, it makes sense that stretch of games that he was just so ludicrously productive. Like, it really makes sense why he would be on that list. I mean, we talk about all the time, you earn the right to rush the passer by playing run defense really well. You tee off and rush the passer. You earn the right to catch passes by pass protecting really well. You're on the field for that reason. And there was a lot of times last year that Jerick McKinnon would kind of chip and leak out to the flat. Patrick Mahomes would kind of scan the field. Kelce's covered or doubled. Some of the other guys aren't open. Checking it down to Jerick McKinnon, making a guy miss for a touchdown, in the red zone. It happened frequently enough. Or when he's on the field, people are going, okay, well, he's going to bring this. He's going to chip here. He's going to do this. The Chiefs can dial up a screen then all of a sudden with this guy. So because of that pass pro, because of his ability to stay on the field with Patrick Mahomes, earning the trust of the quarterback, the offensive linemen, knowing how those guys want things. We heard tons last offseason about how there are, offensive linemen that don't want help from a running back because it can kind of reframe some of the things that they're doing. We don't hear that about Jerick McKinnon at all. He's just so technically sound from that perspective that it earns him the right to be on the field. So, yeah, it always made sense to add Jerick McKinnon back to this team. They don't have somebody that they really trust in pass protection the way that they trust Jerick McKinnon. I know that's good. Whenever they move on from him, it's going to be a downgrade. Don't get me wrong. But coming up to the level where they could trust it enough. Just wasn't happening this year. They couldn't get a guy in the draft that they trusted enough to be able to do that this year. So, yeah, made perfect sense to bring him back. And you're going to get offensive production out of him, like you mentioned there, especially in the red zone, especially on some third down situations. He is a very effective member of this rotation. It's just about keeping him healthy, keeping him ready for the postseason and the late season, which they've got the guys, they've got the horses to do this year. I would expect we're going to see, similar to last year, lots of Isaiah Pacheco, lots of Clyde Edwards-Helaire earlier in the year, and then transition over to more Jerick McKinnon towards the end of the year.
Yeah, 15 targets in the red zone for Jerick McKinnon, 8 touchdowns. That's pretty efficient. That's pretty efficient. There's a lot of guys that don't have 8 catches on 15 targets. Visiting with Craig Stout, kcsn.substack.com. One more in the receiver part of it, and then we'll let you go. The catch rate over expected that is out there, and it was also Nick Shook at NFL.com, and he talked about the different disruptors in the NFL, and Chris Jones comes in ranked there, deep passers, pass catchers, and he looked at catch rate over expected, and there's a lot of names on here that you would expect to see, and then there's one that was a real surprise and made its way around Twitter, the other day, and that is number 1 in the NFL, catch rate over expected, is Richie James of now the Kansas City Chiefs. And I see that name, and we see the production he had last year with the Giants, and we know about his returnability, and yet while I talk about, maybe Creed Humphrey is a little, underrated or maybe overlooked, and you had a good point. It was set it and forget it, and that's why we don't really talk about Creed Humphrey all that much. But Richie James was signed. I liked the Richie James signing, and then they draft Rashee Rice, and then there's talk about Hopkins, but Justin Ross and John Ross, and it kind of feels like, Richie James may be on the back end and may not make the team. How much are we maybe underestimating what he can bring to the table and what maybe the Chiefs saw in Richie James? And when he was targeted by Daniel Jones had a 120 quarterback rating when targeting Richie James. Daniel Jones did not have a 120 quarterback rating last year. But when he was throwing to Richie James, he did. What do you make of that? That number 1 player in the NFL ends up being a guy who was a underrated signing, didn't get a whole lot of fanfare, and is even one of the people that Chiefs fans may think may not make the team.
I mean, it's wild because he's kind of an analytics darling. That's not the only element that you've seen floating around. And lots of yards per target, stuff like that, and it really is interesting to see a player like that clearly has some untapped potential, been playing in an offense that last year under Brian Dable and Mike Kafka is a guy that kind of exploded onto the scene a little bit more, wasn't just a kick punt returner type player. He was actually used in the offense a little bit more. I think the reason that we're not talking about him more as Chiefs fans is because, A, we haven't seen him on the field in the offense yet. It does help that the Kansas City Chiefs are constantly talking about both Rosses right now. Richie James kind of gets put on the back end. But I think if we get to preseason and we see him start running with the ones, start running with the twos, and looking good, like looking crisp, getting the ball, working within the structure of the offense a little bit more, I think all of a sudden it will make a lot more sense as to why that guy's on the roster. I think the similar sort of thing went with Justin Watson last year, where everybody just kind of went, okay, well, he's going to be a special teams guy. Yeah, clearly Patrick likes him. He's talking about him plenty. Get to the preseason. Oh, okay, he's running with the ones a little bit. He's running with the twos. He's a good blocker. I get why he's making the team. It just rounds out. And then he ends up playing a ton of snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I'm not saying that Richie James is going to do that. They certainly added a bunch more guys. But he is the perfect offseason swing for this receiver room. They needed a few more veteran-ish guys to come into the building that know how things are going to be done. He's already got familiarity with Kafka's offense, so it's not like he's walking into a completely foreign environment. He's going to be able to come in, work with Andy Reid, work with Patrick Mahomes. He's been there. He's been working with him in Texas, working at OTAs and all of that. If one of these young wide receivers needs some more time, if there are injuries, he is the perfect guy to kind of slot in there. He's going to be the quote-unquote Marcus Kemp role. And Kemp played a very important role down the stretch last year. I think everybody remembers that AFC Championship game. But Richie James is that level of player in this offense. Not a guy that we're going to look at, I think, at the end of the year and go, boy, look at him. He had 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. It would be great if he did. But I think he'll be a guy that we look at and it's like, okay, yeah, he had 180 yards receiving in the offense and a touchdown or two, but I remember every single one of those yards because they came at an important time or when he was filling in with somebody, and it allowed the offense to continue in the way that it was before. And so that's really what he's bringing to the table. I can absolutely see him making the roster. I can also absolutely see a guy like Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, progressing to the point where they believe, hey, listen, we're really good at wide receiver right now. We believe in these young guys. We appreciate you, Richie. We appreciate what you're doing for special teams, but you're on the outside looking in for this group. So I can see it either way. I just think that he's the perfect guy for this offseason, for this wide receiver group to come in here, and he's certainly got the untapped potential on the analytical side of things to be able to come in and maybe create a little bit more than we're all expecting.
The issue that he has with people not talking enough about him is he goes by Richie James. If he just went by Rick James, it would have been much better.
I mean,
people would talk about him a lot. They would say that his ability is super freaky. You know, he missed a huge opportunity there.
I mean, we can adopt that. I mean, maybe Richie doesn't want that. We should run that by him before we start doing that. But if he's cool with it, I think that could really raise the profile a little bit.
If his name is Rick James, we talk a whole lot more about him than Richie James. Craig Stout, KCSN.substack.com, KC Laboratory Podcast. Craig, you're the man. Appreciate it. You hit the home run in the pinch hit for Kent Swanson today. As always, man, I love talking football with you. Enjoy the next few weeks, and we'll catch up eventually. We'll see how many other people want to take vacation. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I'll be responsible, and I'll talk to you next week, Jason.
Absolutely. There's Craig Stout, KCSN.substack.com, KC Laboratory Podcast. And again, go check out the really awesome series he has on raising Andy Heck, and all the different techniques, how he teaches it, what the Chiefs do, what they want to accomplish, what they see in offensive linemen, how they get the job done in being able to pass protect, run block, things like that. So interesting stuff there from KC Sports Network's Craig Stout. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. We will hear from Andy Reid and the Chiefs coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. No sports or leisure today, but Chiefs football conversation continuing as we'll hear from your Kansas City Chiefs and different coaches, players coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. More Zone rolling along on this Thursday edition of The Zone. We continue here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Big thanks to Google Fiber being a part of the show as well. More Zone next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
You know, all around sports, size matters. Baseball, football, the trenches, the home run hitters. At every level, that's something we've all learned. The measurables are important. One thing I didn't know until I started talking to my friends at Shamrock Roofing and Construction is that when it comes to hail damaging your roof, size actually doesn't matter. That's right. When severe weather arrives and hail hits your roof, it's time to call Shamrock Roofing and Construction. Doesn't matter if it's not huge hail. Doesn't matter what it is falling on your roof. I was doing some yard work yesterday, getting back from the trip and everything, realizing, oh man, I haven't mowed in a very long time. My backyard is riddled with sticks and all sorts of things falling out of the trees. It might just be time for you to get some good people up on your roof to see what the status of your roof actually is. Because when you have Shamrock Roofing and Construction, they're going to take care of all of that, and all you got to worry about is the protection. At Shamrock Roofing and Construction, they have Kansas City's best ready to draw up a perfect play to put a roof over your head when you need it. And Shamrock offers you peace of mind with a protection plan that will keep your MVP safe for many, many seasons to come. When it comes to hail, size doesn't matter. Big or small, one call does it all. Call Shamrock Roofing at 913-850-6556 and visit them online at shamrockroofer.com. Shamrock Roofing and Construction, one call does it all.
I'm Dr. Andrew Palmisano, a fellowship-trained orthopedic...
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Thank you to Craig Stout, KC Sports Network, kcsn.substack.com. Go check that out. Good stuff on his series of Andy Heck and looking at all the different techniques and everything. It was really cool and informative stuff. So thank you to him weighing in on the Chiefs, talking a lot of offensive line there, obviously, as that's what he's been doing the last month or so. And then looking at some of the different rankings that are out there that are coming out right now and different stats and groupings of players with Creed Humphrey that we talked about yesterday being the number one center according to Pro Football Focus, and then Pro Football Focus also having their different categories of top 10 players receiving on third and fourth down, in the red zone, and in the slot, and having two different Chiefs players show up in those categories, one being Travis Kelce, third and fourth down. He is the number 3 most efficient pass catcher, receiver, tight end, running back, no matter what. Number 3 on third and fourth down. Number 1, Justin Jefferson. Number 2, Christian McCaffrey. Number 3, Travis Kelce. The slot, Travis Kelce, number 6, working out of the slot, even as a tight end. The top 5 are Amari Cooper, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Smith, Tyreek Hill, and then Devontae Adams, and then Travis Kelce. Working in the red zone, the surprise, and maybe not a surprise when you think about it, number 1, George Kittle. Number 2, Austin Eckler. Number 3, Mike Gesicki. Number 4, Jamar Chase. Number 5, Jerick McKinnon. Most effective, productive in terms of percentage of red zone for any pass catcher. 15 targets to Jerick McKinnon in the red zone, 8 touchdowns. That's pretty efficient. So, it's kind of a surprise when his name shows up, but then you think about how good he was last year, the production that he had, the touchdowns that he had. It does make sense for Jerick McKinnon, but out of the 30 different spots that could have been ranked out of third and fourth down, red zone, and slot, those 3 different categories, top 10, only 3 running backs showed up. That would be Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, and Jerick McKinnon. That is certainly interesting for somebody that was an under-the-radar sort of returning signing last year of late in the offseason after the surgery and recovery and all of that stuff. It's like, oh, they re-signed Jerick McKinnon. That's good, good. And then he had the season he had this year, and it seemed like there were a lot of people that were trying to court Jerick McKinnon on different teams, and the Chiefs bring him back. Thankfully, they bring him back because I have been a McKinnon stan, a McKinnon truther for a few years now since they signed him. So I'm glad he's back on the team, not just in helping out in pass protection, but also being a guy there that does that in the passing game, because it's 2 birds, 1 stone. When he's on the field, he can protect Patrick Mahomes, but also you see how effective he is in the passing game, and it's not relied upon to have Edwards-Helaire or even Isaiah Pacheco, who I do think will start to get more and more work in the passing game. But McKinnon, a guy there that is rated at that. And then the catch rate over expected by Nick Shook at NFL.com, according to Next Gen Stats. Catch rate over what the expected catch rate would have been for the target, the route, the coverage, all of that. Number 1 in the NFL is Richie James. A guy who there's certainly a group of people that put him on the list of will be cut, that won't make the team if you're looking at 6 wide receivers and maybe 7 without the fullback. But we know that you got MVS and Sky Moore and Rashee Rice, and you've got Kadarius Toney, those 4 receivers. They signed Richie James. They bring back Justin Watson. Everybody loves Ross and Ross, the law firm of Ross and Ross, John Ross, Justin Ross. And, if Hopkins is out there and they end up signing him, that is a crowded room. And yet Richie James was number 1 in catch rate over expected. And when Daniel Jones targeted Richie James, he had a 119.6 quarterback rating. Daniel Jones did not have a 120 quarterback rating last year. But when he targeted Richie James on 70 attempts, he did. He had that quarterback rating. It's pretty interesting for somebody that's kind of just like an also ran in the wide receiver group. We named 4, and then it's like James and Watson, and then you throw them in with other guys that are either signed or undrafted free agents, and maybe DeAndre Hopkins, things like that, who would then push somebody else down the line. But he's been productive since he's been in the NFL, and he's gotten better and better. And then he shows up at the top of this list, which is interesting with all of the names that are there that populate that list. And it's Richie James, being number one.
You given the choice, rather have the top end of your depth chart be the crowded one where you just can't decide which of these number one receivers is really the number one guy. But, the very few teams have quite that delicious of a problem roster-wise. And we've seen the Chiefs kind of try to do this a little bit each of these last 2 years. And again, Justin Watson was obviously the one last year who just ended up making a role for himself that was very, very lightly discussed. And then he was more talked about in the playoffs than he was in the preseason. That's not usually how that works for kind of no-name receivers. And this year, with that huge list, this will be, of course, perfect fodder for training camp. Both the battles of, all right, well, there might be a couple spots open here. Let's see who rises and who falls. But even then, when cut-down days come around, we may have a better picture for it. I mean, by the time cut-downs came last year, I feel like at least Matt Derrick was firmly on Justin Watson making this team.
Yeah.
I know he was on the Darius Harris. That was the one that blew my mind, and he was right about. But you can sometimes, by the end of camp, have a better guess for where those positions are going to end up. But right now, I really do believe that the Chiefs have however many spots would be open. Now, they're not carrying a fullback, so maybe that helps them carry an extra tight end or whatever. But when you look at the bottom of that roster, you have an open competition from 5 or 6 guys you could reasonably see with those last 2 spots. And what that's going to do is if you do have a Kadarius Toney injury, or if Sky Moore doesn't produce to quite the level you want, not quite as comfortable, you're going to have a lot of redundancies. Even if it's Rashee Rice getting redshirted, whatever the plan may be, the Chiefs are going to make sure they don't have any bums needing to get work in this offense. Are they going to have superstars? Probably not, unless Kadarius Toney is healthy for a full year. You've got a lot of good, useful players, but they're going to make sure that at no point do they have someone completely unreliable out there, and that's obviously a good thing when it cost you as little as it did to bring in Richie James and both of the Rosses.
Let's take a timeout. We'll come back, and on the other side, we discussed if it was a bit or if it was organic at the White House when Travis Kelce of I've been waiting for this for a long time. Travis Kelce in the New Heights podcast answers that question and explains what was going on there on the stage. We'll do that on the other side of the break. More Zone coming along. We will hear from the Chiefs and Andy Reid coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. More next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, and Drake heading up until 2 o'clock. So we talked a lot about whether or not it was a bit. Was it real? Was it organic? What did Travis Kelce have planned at the podium? Or was it just a quick, I've been waiting for this for a long time, and Patrick Mahomes comes over, I'm sorry, and grabs them, and this whole thing was pre-planned. New Heights podcast, Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce got into the conversation about Travis going to Washington, and some funny anecdotes, like right now Kelce does not have a license. He lost his actual license, so he's been walking around with his 2018 Ohio license, which is very much expired. I believe he said expired in 2018 because he's now a resident of Missouri, so he's got a Missouri.
Lost it or misplaced it?
He just said he lost his license.
He didn't say it was taken from him, right?
No, he just lost it, which, by the way...
But you can lose your license.
He flies private, so he doesn't need to go through the airport like you and I do. It's
I'm guessing he has his passport somewhere, too.
He probably has that as well. But
gotta get to Germany here in a little bit, guy.
But you had to show your ID to get into the White House.
Yeah.
And they didn't think anything of it. They just looked at the ID, looked at him. All right, keep going. So that was a fun anecdote, and him being in the Oval Office for a little bit. But they got to the big conversation, the main conversation about what in the heck was going on. Here's Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce talking about what took social media by storm.
What were you gonna say when you went up to the podium while President Joe Biden was distracted?
Distracted. So I've been waiting for this. Sorry.
It was the oldest trick in the book, and Joe fell for it. It was, what's over there? I mean, come on.
Obviously, the president at the podium, it's iconic, right?
Sure.
It's iconic, and how he usually addresses the nation to my fellow Americans. That's all I wanted to say, dude.
That's all you wanted to say?
That's it. I just wanted to go up there. I shouldn't have started off with, I've always wanted to do this.
If you would have started off with my fellow Americans... That would have been such a showstopper. I don't think they would have kicked you off. If somebody gets up to the podium and says, my fellow Americans, it's like immediate, like, all right, what's this dude about to say?
Pat knew that I was...
Yeah, Pat was on it.
I was in over my head, man.
Pat knew right away when you pointed, he was like, there ain't nothing over there. This is a flanking move if I know Travis, and he's a flanker.
He's seen that one before. Shout out to Pat, man, for keeping me from embarrassing myself at that podium, man, in front of the world.
It wasn't a bit.
Sounds like it wasn't a bit.
Kelce really went up there unplanned to start talking at the podium at the White House with the presidential seal.
And he's right. He should have just dove right into it.
My fellow Americans. I mean,
because if that's where Mahomes gets him, oh, perfect.
Gotta go straight. Saved it. Mahomes really does know what Travis is thinking at all times.
I think he must.
That is what that move by Patrick Mahomes was. That was a father of two. Always being aware of where the child is and what the child might do when there's different distractions around them and things that they can get in trouble or get hurt by. You immediately have like the parental sense of being able to scan like you're running recon of everything in the area that could be an injury or some sort of embarrassment or getting in trouble. And Patrick seeing Travis walk over there, the corner of his eye, and then walk over and grab him as all he got out was, I've been waiting for this for a long time. And he was going to say, my fellow Americans. And then that was it. But Patrick, knowing Kelce, immediately goes over there and stops him. I thought it was a bit. I was 100% convinced it was a bit. I thought they pulled it off beautifully, but it was just organic.
And I now am envisioning Travis Kelce as like a toddler making a beeline for the stairs. Like that's where Mahomes like, nope. It's like Mahomes didn't lunge over after him. He was like, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna intercept you and just turn you right back around.
Sorry about that. Sorry, people. It's like we're at little man's basketball game last night. My daughter is dribbling on the sideline, loses it. It goes out on the court. She starts running out on the court. Grab her. Sorry. Pull her out. Get the basketball off the court. Yep. My bad. Jules, you have to stay over here. That was Patrick. Sorry. The kid got away. Didn't mean to have him go to come back over here with the group. We're back. We're going to take a group picture. So stupid. Dang it. Man. I wonder if Kelsey was like, so stupid. He was mad at himself because I thought he was playing it off. I thought he was acting. But maybe he's mad at himself because he didn't get to say my fellow Americans at the podium, which is really all he wanted to do.
He also could have played through contact. If Mahomes could have gotten his hand up there and he still could have gone, my fellow Americans, and then just gotten dragged away, hopefully by Mahomes and not secret security. But that's also a risky game to play. I mean, I don't think anybody's really viewing Travis Kelce as a security threat at that point. But the Secret Service is not necessarily a group I'd want to test with a fun bit. So maybe moving with Mahomes was the right call upon further thought.
Yeah, that's. I mean, he led the league in yards after the catch last year. So not necessarily yards after contact.
Yeah.
But the most cumulative yards after the catch, Mahomes caught him. So after the catch, he does not lead in words after the catch. That was unfortunate.
Do you think that the Secret Service should have hired Derwin James just for that moment? Like, if the Chiefs go back again, does he need to be there just in a black suit and sunglasses?
Maybe.
Just in case Kelce takes the podium again, and then all of a sudden you powerbomb him off the stage? I mean, that would be another story.
Well, we know Patrick Mahomes can play defense now because he intercepted Kelce's attempt to offer a speech to my fellow Americans.
Also, a solid block. You know, like if you don't want your quarterback putting his shoulder in anybody, but you can kind of get in the way.
And it's so true. Travis offering the look over there, and then running to the podium.
Head fake on the presidential stage. Would you like some earth-shattering NFL news? Per Ian Rappaport,
Dalvin Cook has been released.
The Los Angeles Rams have added a weapon. Wide receiver, Demarcus Robinson. And you thought they were going backwards this year. Oh, hold on. They still are.
Is that weapon on safety?
It's a weapon
perpetually on safety?
Turned against their offense on occasion.
Hey, you know what? Demarcus Robinson did fine.
Yeah.
He liked to run backwards, but, he was fine.
NFL
Fine
receiver.
player. It's not his fault. He was like the second or third wide receiver on the team. Best of luck to him. But looking forward to as a Charger running backwards.
Hey guys, Regain wants to help you celebrate Father's Day with a groundbreaking procedure for our men, Bocox. Bocox provides a unique way to use neurotoxins to...
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We'll hear from the Chiefs coming up an hour from now. That'll be Andy Reid, Justin Reid, Juwan Taylor, and Blaine Gabbert. Those are the four at the podium coming up at 1 o'clock. 913-912-4810. First hour of the show today, we talked about the NBA Game 3 of the NBA Finals last night with the historic night for Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, and yet stealing some of the headlines was Christian Braun. And the game that he had 7 of 8 from the field in 19 minutes. He had 15 points, 4 rebounds, and a steal. And in just an incredible night that the first time we have ever seen a pair of teammates have a 30-point triple-double in NBA history, not just in the finals of the playoffs, but in the regular season too. Any time an NBA game has been played, we've never seen teammates have 30-point triple-doubles. And yet, one of the storylines was Christian Braun last night because he was just that freaking good and was a difference maker in a game in which Denver felt like they controlled for a good portion of the second half. They led the entire second half. They were up by as many as 21 points, even though it got kind of nip-tuck in the fourth quarter. We saw that in game 1 as well. Thought it was kind of interesting that Eric Spoelstra puts in the subs, empties the bench, and Michael Malone keeps his starters in there, and the bench starts scoring for Miami, all of a sudden gets within 9, and then Spoelstra brings the starters back out there. Like, hold on. It's like a minute and a half to go, and we're down 9. Let's get these guys back in here. They did not complete the comeback, but Michael Malone still not pleased about the Heat knocking down some shots. And even knocking down some threes for the Miami Heat, they still only shot like 30% from the field. And last night, Gabe Vincent talking about how small of a margin for error they have, which to me is just simply acknowledging, reality of it. It's like Michael Malone when people are like, wow, he's calling out his team for effort. Like, he's not necessarily calling out his team for effort. It's sort of just like he's saying what everybody else saw. Like, he's saying the thing that people were witnessing in game 2. So is he calling out his team or just simply acknowledging publicly what everybody else had been talking about too? Certainly he saw that. And plus, calling out his team, yeah, it's the NBA Finals. In game 2 of the NBA Finals, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed too if I felt like there was a lack of effort and communication from my team. And Gabe Vincent simply saying what a lot of people have talked about already is the margin for error that's there, in that, they got beat pretty good in a game in which they shot 30% from 3 in game 1, even though they came back, made it a little bit closer. And then last night they're down by as many as 21 in a game in which they shot, 30% from behind the arc. And then they shot almost 50% and they won by 3. Like, that's the margin for error for Miami. They end up losing by 15 last night. So I think Gabe Vincent also just acknowledging what really has been the theme of this NBA Finals, in that this is Denver's to lose. They are the heavy favorite. They were still the favorites last night, even, that they had just lost game 2 and it was in Miami. They were still 3.5-point favorites and they covered. That's just simply been the conversation. And the Miami Heat, they got to know that. And they do know that because Gabe Vincent is saying, we've got a small margin for error. We can't do the things we did in this game.
And it's interesting that the Mike Malone point in particular, as I don't know if I ever mentioned, I'm a Suns fan, and we have a new head coach now because the previous coach, who really accomplished quite a bit in the playoffs, you could start to feel pretty evidently, not just Monty Williams and DeAndre Ayton, but just sort of the vibe between the coach and the roster. There's something had gotten a little bit out of whack. And the interesting thing with Malone is that he has been as publicly critical of his own team as any head coach you'll find in the modern NBA, not named Popovich, I suppose. So, the modern NBA. He's still in it, but he may not be of it, Pop in particular. But for Mike Malone, it seems like there is a total cohesion in whatever the culture they have there. Obviously, Heat culture is sort of the mimetic culture of the NBA, but what Denver seems to have in terms of the standard they hold each other to, and also just the ability to communicate both in the huddle and in the press conference, and I'm sure obviously behind closed doors. Malone is one of the only coaches where those mic'd up huddle moments are kind of interesting to me, because usually they power wash out the most interesting stuff. And maybe it's just the usually incredibly hoarse tone of his voice that makes it sound even more raw, because it's always in here. But for him, it is always about intensity, and let's not let them hang around. In this game, in this series, it was like that throughout the playoffs to get to this point. I think he pretty evidently has the trust of his players and that is shared vice versa, to where they can be criticized by their head coach, and he can keep the foot on the gas because they all understand. They actually do have the same goal. They all are speaking the same language in the same tones, and maybe I'm just a little jealous to look over and see what looks like a really healthy environment for a team that's just trying to get across the finish line right now.
Well, and you also look at it and see that, you know, the guys acknowledge it too.
Yes.
Like the players were not backing away or caught off guard that was something that was said. It was,
right.
You know.
They're also seeing it.
Yeah.
It's not an imbalance of players are kind of, you know, bleeping around and the coach is, hey, you know, straighten up. It never feels like scolding any more so than those players are probably saying to themselves and to each other behind closed doors.
Yeah. And
publicly. Like
and we'll see what happens in Game 4. I do need the Heat to win one more because the wallet has Nuggets in 6. So I appreciate the Heat winning Game 2. Find a way to win one more and have the Nuggets win it in 6. That'd be perfectly fine. I'm good with that because the same game parlays haven't worked out yet. But
yeah.
I still have at least two more nights of a same game parlay to come through. The best parts of, like, unless you have somebody with the under in points.
Yeah.
The best nights for same-game parlays are when there's tons of scoring. Because typically you'll have, like, points and assists or threes and things like that. Every once in a while you'll throw some peanuts on Michael Porter Jr. under in points, since that's been something that's happening with him. And just continue to ride that Michael Porter Jr. under in points, probably in Game 4, because I wonder how many minutes Michael Porter Jr. will play in Game 4, considering if he starts to struggle a little bit or is not in it. We saw Michael Malone become more and more comfortable with playing Christian Braun a good portion of the second half, that it wouldn't be surprising if that takes place again on Friday night if Porter Jr. doesn't have that full-on intensity, is sort of defensive awareness that's lacking. So I'd probably ride the under on Michael Porter Jr. But don't listen to me because I've been spot on and killing it. Fade me.
Are you going all 10 legs for the boosted ones to get the max boost, or you gone both? You tried a little bit of both?
I've done a little bit of both.
Okay.
Where I'll do, like, I also have, even if it's not the single game parlay boost, even if it's just a regular single game parlay, I'll have one that I'll have a little fun. Like last night, I didn't hit on the single game parlay that wasn't the boosted one, but I had, Jamal Murray 30 or more points, Jimmy Butler 30 or more points, Jokic with a triple-double, and then I had a couple of other extreme ones that didn't hit, that it was like, hey, here's $10 that'd pay you $1,500.
See, that's the good stuff right there.
But it's like, odds are I wasn't going to, so that, yes, some of them came through, but there's a reason you get that return on $10 because it ain't going to happen.
They're long odds for a reason. Yeah.
For sure. But it's like, oh, some came through. Oh, so stupid. Why didn't I just do those 3? And then I would have taken home $300. But no, it's fun just to keep throwing stupid stuff and just clicking. Oh, this could happen. Click. Oh, that I could see that happening. Click. It's so smart. You should definitely listen to me.
Definitely.
But if I'd have just done that individually, Jamal Murray to score 30, Jimmy Butler to score 30, Jokic to have a triple-double, I would have been better off.
Would have been in the black for sure.
Would have been better off. 913-912-4810. We talked about The Athletic yesterday with Ken Rosenthal and his report about the Royals packaging Aroldis Chapman and Scott Barlow, or Aroldis Chapman and Salvador Perez. Ken Rosenthal saying, high-priced asset, also saying that, salary dump, which, again, I don't think that if they trade Salvador Perez, it would be for a salary dump. I don't buy that for a second. And I think there's a pretty good return that can come from Salvador Perez without saying, all right, you're just trying to get rid of this money. You're trying to get rid of this contract. Like, Carlos Santana, just, all right, it's time to just move on from him and his contract. The MLB Trade Rumors talked about the Ken Rosenthal piece at The Athletic and said that clubs expressing trade interest in Aroldis Chapman go back to as early as the second week in May. You've got till the end of July, so you've got 7 weeks to get something done right now. But the Royals are making it known to interested teams that Chapman is available right now. And there's a couple of things. One, it could increase the asking price, the package in return for Chapman, because you get him for another 7 weeks as opposed to waiting till the end of July. You mitigate the risk of an injury for the next 7 weeks for Aroldis Chapman, or something happening to where it's like, okay, trade him, get something for him. And if you're going to, package him with somebody else, you might be able to get, like if you separated Barlow and Chapman, it's one of the things we talked about yesterday, as Ken Rosenthal said, these two players being in separate deals could have a greater return. And it could. It certainly could have a greater return. So you could get a C+, B- prospect for Chapman, who's a rent-a player and has had his issues and blow-ups in the postseason and quit on the Yankees last year. So there's probably some skepticism of Chapman, who's doing this on a team that isn't competing, that isn't in a you have to come through here to win this game so that you can keep pace in the division to try to make the playoffs. That's a little bit different than, hey, come through here while this team is leading 3-2 and 18-40 on the season. A little bit different pressure and a little bit different of, quote, high leverage situations. So you could get a C+, B- prospect maybe in return for Aroldis Chapman. Scott Barlow, could you get, B- for Barlow because he's got a year of team control if you want to go to arbitration with him. So if you do that and you say, here's this guy, here's that guy, or maybe a package of a couple of C's that would equal that, right, individually. Or if you say Barlow and Chapman are together, is there a chance you increase it to, instead of getting 2 or 3 players, you get one player that could be a B+, or maybe even an A- prospect that somebody's going, all right, we're willing to give this guy up because, one, it can change our entire outlook with adding Chapman and Barlow to the bullpen, and we still have another year of Barlow, so we're willing to give up this particular prospect as opposed to a couple of C's. I am more in favor. Typically, it's a, just try to get as many players as you can in a deal. But the Royals replenishing the farm system, I mean, they can look at it that way, but we've seen them do that when it's okay, for Benintendi, you got Beckway and Sycamore and Chandler Champlain. Who, and who right now in the farm system? I mean, Sycamore we know just because he was at Mizzou. Yeah. That's about it. Or, teams may not be willing, so you got to have a willing partner. But if you're offering Chapman and Barlow, is it more of, hey, we're going to need a better return here, a higher level of a prospect, may not be a top 100 prospect, but somebody that can move into the top 5 of the Royals prospects right now, depending on how stout somebody else's prospect list is. And maybe they get a deal in Baltimore this weekend that is just stacked with prospects, who knows, and are trying to make the playoffs, and you get, an extra 7 weeks of Chapman and Barlow. I am fascinated to see what the market would be, Josh, if you were to separate these guys out and piece them out or package them together to see what prospects you can get in return.
Yeah, and I think in a vacuum, I'd rather have the one, air quotes, higher quality prospect than 2 guys that you don't expect as much from, specifically in baseball, because it just feels like that latter group is infinite and the former group is at least a little bit finite.
I feel like the Royals are packed with organizational depth.
I think that's right. Now, if you want to go in a more, maybe even more worried route, hey, I guess more chances to develop a guy might be better in the long haul, right? You can see what you believe about your scouting and what you believe about your player development. Right now, the Royals haven't earned a ton of faith in either of those departments recently. So, going back to kind of in the vacuum, I'd rather have the one higher pedigree prospect. But I keep thinking about it from the trading team's side, and I don't have every 7th, 8th, and 9th inning in baseball figured out for all 30 teams. But it would be kind of interesting to say we are a team that is contending, and we want 2 late high leverage relievers. And not everyone's got a pure closer. Maybe you're a team that's got your absolute closer, and you just want to bulk out the rest of your bullpen. Or you're saying, hey, the guy we currently have usually pitching in the 9th, we could move him back to the 8th. So now Aroldis Chapman and Scott Barlow are pitching our 7th and 9th. And again, we're hunting matchups, and we're not in the years of everyone having a dedicated inning anymore. I'm well aware of that. But it would be kind of an interesting team to try to find in the ether that is contending, has a competent enough bullpen to be contending right now, and wants to add 2 pieces that aren't quite both Rena players. Chapman obviously is, and Barlow's a little bit more than that. But to figure out where that landing spot would be has been a little bit of a tougher logic puzzle for me, rather than 2 teams talking themselves into, yeah, one of us wants a flamethrower for the next the next back half of the season. One of us take a year and a half of Scott Barlow to see what he can do with our team. It's a little easier for me to come up mentally with 2 half-definite destinations rather than this one team potentially doubling down, even though the doubling down might be better for the Royal side.
And let me also clarify what I mean by organizational depth, because I think that can be received as, okay, so you're saying the Royals are packed with depth in the farm system and prospects. No, what I'm saying is the Royals are packed with players that would just be viewed as organizational depth. Not like this guy's a major league player. No, here's a guy that if he develops could be a 5th outfielder. Could he be a utility guy? Could he be a 4A player that can fill a role if somebody goes down? And you've got some guys maybe you can reach down into in AAA and bring up, and it's not like, you've got the worst player in the world. I think the Royals are stacked with guys that are viewed as, oh, you've got some organizational depth with this guy.
Right.
But not the, hey, here's a top 100 prospect that you're expecting to develop, and then when the guy gets ready, boom, he's going to be up with the big league club. There are a couple of guys, certainly, that the Royals think they have in that. It sucks that Gavin Cross dropped out of the top 100 of prospects, but it doesn't, just because somebody didn't rank him in the top 100, it doesn't change what we're already seeing from Gavin. If Gavin Cross slid from, 76, wherever he was, to 91, he'd still be in the top 100, but it wouldn't change what we're seeing from him and having his 1/3 of every at-bats be a strikeout.
Right.
When he's hitting the ball, he's crushing it. But he's a college guy at A-ball who is striking out 1/3 of the time. He's not a high school kid who's in his 2nd year of professional ball, or really still first full year, because last year being drafted, and then it's not even the draft for this year. But, not even a full year of professional ball as a high schooler that's striking out 30% of the time. This is a college bat who's supposed to be a little bit closer to developed, that is lost when it comes to the strike zone and free swinging. And again, striking out 1/3 of every time he goes to the plate in A-ball. That's a concern. Can he fix that? Yeah, he can. I mean, I'll use an example of a guy who is not Gavin Cross, who's much better. Ellie De La Cruz, who we've talked about, was striking out at a really alarming rate. And it was, until he gets that figured out, like he's striking out like 35% of the time. He's just swinging at everything. Well, then he stopped.
Yep.
And then he just started swinging at pitches that were in the strike zone and crushing them.
No one's saying Gavin Cross's career is over.
That's right. It's just it's a little concerning that this guy's a college hitter and he's an A-ball. Yeah. And by the way, when I was talking about Ellie De La Cruz, that was AA and AAA that he was striking out that much. A-ball, sorry, he should be doing a little bit more than that. But they hope, and the development of him is the plan that, he's taken in the top 10, that he can come up and help the club at some point in his development. I don't think he is, okay, this is just organizational depth. He'd better not be that.
Right.
He'd better not just be organizational depth. Asa Lacy would be awesome if he ends up being organizational depth right now. Because right now he's not. He's not even an arm that's pitching competitively. And Mazzucato had a, quote, collision. Mm-hmm. Somebody, somewhere, somehow, and he's out for a month. And he was pitching pretty well. So I think there are guys that they view as more than that. But when do they start to make that move and be somebody you could hopefully rely on that's not just this group, and saying, who do you trade, how do you supplement, and the money that you can go out and spend in the offseason, and we'll see if they even do that. Because that's the next part of this whole thing. You trade Chapman, you trade Barlow, you trade Salvi, depending on what you get back, and you go into this offseason, because a year ago, J.J. Piccolo said, yeah, we'll spend money when the time comes that it would make a difference. This is going to be an evaluation year. Okay, great. We've got the rest of June, July, August, September to evaluate what this team's going to be. And I hope they've got answers on where they think some guys will fit in. Because when you get those answers, now what do you have to do? Well, do you got to go and make a trade here, make a trade for this person, sign a free agent here or there? Because just by spending money does not solve problems. They could have went out and outbid the Texas Rangers for Jacob deGrom. That's a risk. Why weren't you in on Jacob deGrom? Well, money, it's too expensive. Well, thank God they're not paying $200 million for Jacob deGrom, who now is going to have a 6th year on his contract because there was a Tommy John clause in there. There was a Tommy clause in that contract, and he gets a 6th year, anywhere from $20 to $37 million. So they do have him for an extra year, whether that's good or bad. Now, that's a club option. They can pick it up. They don't have to pick it up if it just ends up being a disaster of a contract. But that's a lot of money. The Rangers have a lot more money now to spend. We're seeing them capitalize on growing payroll, spending money in free agency, having some guys come up from the minors and make an impact. And they've also spent on some pitchers. deGrom didn't work out. Nathan Eovaldi has worked out. And he was right around the contract of Jordan Lyles. It's just a matter of making that decision. And Jordan Lyles was the guy they could afford that might have been willing to sign with the Royals. And he is on a historic pace.
That's right.
I mean, if you're going to be bad,
be historic.
That's right. Be remembered for something. Go down in the record books. And he is one of, Drake told us this, one of 3 players in Major League Baseball history for a team to lose a pitcher's first 13 starts. Doesn't mean that the pitcher starts out 0-13. It means that he starts the game and the team loses. It's 13 consecutive. The Royals have not won a game that Jordan Lyles has started. Now, some of that is Jordan Lyles. Probably a large part of that is Jordan Lyles. Some of that also is the offense doesn't seem to score runs. So there can be times where a pitcher gives up 5 runs, may not get the win, but the team can go and win that game. Those things happen in Major League Baseball. It's just not happening for Jordan Lyles. And there was a quality start on the line, if people care about that or not. I don't really care about the quality start metric because the Royals can't even get quality games being played. They need quality at bats. They need quality innings, quality at bats, both on the mound and in the box. But they were an out away from having a quality start for Jordan Lyles until the double drove in 2 runs to make it 5 that Jordan Lyles ended up giving up 5 earned runs because the inherited runners scored. And I laughed. I laughed because they talked about the last time there was a quality start for the Royals, and it was like something like, I think Woodrow Wilson was in.
1904 is kind of what I
was in office at that time. And they're like, if you can get out of this inning, you can strand these runners. He's got 7+ innings. Had he not gone out there for the 8th, it would have been a quality start. But just like even it's like something to feel good about that he went 7 innings, gave up 3 runs, kept the team in it, send him back out there for the 8th. And it's funny because he didn't send him back out there for the 6th, his last outing when he had 74 pitches after 5 innings and 1 earned run and 8 strikeouts. And Lyles wanted to go back out there. Did not do that. Royals end up losing that game, even though they only gave up 1 run. This one, he went 7 innings, did the job, gave up only 3 runs, but then got sent back out there for the 8th. 2 guys get on, doesn't record an out. Those 2 guys score, and he gives up 5 earned runs. And he just sat there in the dugout with the look of, you're bleeping me right now. Like, that's the Royals. You signed with the Royals. 18-44.
No point if we set the Royals record I've ever gone, I'm used to hearing those numbers. By the way, just before the texts come in.
What'd I say?
No, nothing. It's just that I wanted to note that Tommy Claus is actually what Santa gets every year on December 26th. So just before the texters take that one from me. I wanted to make sure I really got to plant my flag in that one. I thought it was too good to let go.
Texas Kelsey throwing out the first pitch Monday. He'd give up less runs than Lyles.
He should give it a shot. Let him be the opener. I'm not saying let him go through 5. I mean, but an opener? Sure.
Text says, no, Jason, I need the Nuggets to win in 5. Says, but hopefully it turns out like Mizzou football bets last season and you're wrong. That's right. Yeah, probably. You know, just keep fading. Keep fading right now when it comes to the NBA Finals. But I'm due.
You're due, man.
You know, Rex Hudler, you always say, like, you know, hey, this guy's 0 for his last 15. He's due. He's due, or he sucks. But Rex, he's due. I feel like I'm due. Friday night, hitting the big one.
Jason and Jordan Lyles, 2 peas in a pod. They're both due.
That's right. Also, just out here giving up runs and getting hit around for no reason.
They are both due.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we're still wondering who's going to be crowned NBA's best. It is 2-1 Denver, and Game 4 coming up on Friday night. You can join the NBA Finals action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers place a $5 bet during the NBA Finals and score $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, all customers can take a shot at bigger payouts with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Open the DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in, place your stepped-up same-game parlay by combining 3 or more bets from any NBA Finals game. You boost your NBA winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. If somebody is hot, please let me know, and I'll go ahead and follow your tips. If you want to know what I'm going with on Friday, I'll let you know so you can then not bet those. Or you can figure out which parts of the legs actually are going to hit and which aren't going to hit, because it's not like I'm 0 for like 7 or 8 in those individual legs. It's just, you know, you got to go 8 for 8, and that's not happening. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Sign up with code 810WHB or 10 for 10, depending on what you're into. New customers can place a $5 bet and score $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code 810WHB.
Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 800-522-4700. 21 plus, physically present in Kansas. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Opt-in and 10 plus leg required for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/basketball terms. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. home and all their devices.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, and Drake. We head up until 2 o'clock. We'll hear from the Chiefs coming up at 1 o'clock. Andy Reid, Justin Reid, Jawan Taylor, and Blaine Gabbert will be at the podium today. 913-912-4810 is the text line to be a part of the show. Text says, my fellow Americans, you have to fight for your right to party.
That's the platform, man.
That would have been it. That would have been it. That would have been great. That's all he had to do. All he had to do. But he didn't. He just got up there and said, I've been waiting for this a long time. And if you're just joining us, we found out on the New Heights podcast that was not a bit. It was organic. It was Travis Kelce trying to sneak up to the podium because he had always wanted to say, my fellow Americans. And yet he buried the lead by saying, I've been waiting a long time. And then apparently he was going to get into to say, my fellow Americans. But by the time he got there, Patrick Mahomes had already grabbed him and said, sorry, that thing was not planned. It was not a bit. And I was duped. I was bamboozled. I thought they had that whole thing planned. But it shows you how much Patrick Mahomes is aware of all of the moves Travis Kelce is making, what he's going to do before he does it. So,
do you know Travis Kelce's only 1 inch taller than Abe Lincoln was? 6'4" and 6'5", apparently.
How about that?
Lyndon B. Johnson, 6'4.5" or 6'3.5".
Yeah,
just Abe Lincoln by a hair.
So he would have been the tallest person there to give a speech in front of a presidential seal.
Well, I'll look into it. James Madison, 5'4". Lionel Messi size.
I was going to talk some Chiefs here with DeAndre Hopkins and the report from Ian Rappaport, also Danielle Hunter with the Minnesota Vikings. But I did want to, you mentioned Lionel Messi. It's big that the MLS got Messi away from Saudi Arabia that was going to pay him like $400 million a year.
Mm-hmm. Is that all?
I reported $400 million per year to play over in Saudi Arabia, leaving Barcelona. But he has confirmed that he is going to sign with the MLS club in Miami. He is going to get a portion of the revenue from Apple TV. He is going to get a portion of all of the added revenue and sales on Adidas, Lionel Messi gear, along with his contract. But while that is awesome and they landed Lionel Messi, boy, it is a slap to the face, his comments about why he signed with Miami. Did you see that, Josh?
No, I saw what Barcelona said about him. I thought that was kind of
So he
low.
said, Lionel Messi in an interview, I made the decision that I'm going to Miami. I still haven't closed it 100%. I'm still missing a few things, but we decided to go ahead. If Barcelona didn't work out, I wanted to leave Europe, get out of the spotlight, and think more about my family. MLS lands Lionel Messi.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I'm signing there because I want to get out of the spotlight. I don't want people to have to, be paying attention all that much to me, so I'm going to the MLS.
Wait a second, you were talking about a decision to go to Miami. I thought you were talking about LeBron for a second. It really threw me off.
I'm going to take my talents to South Beach.
Should have done it in front of a Boys and Girls Club. Get some kids in the background.
You know what? Maybe he could raise $2 million for Boys and Girls Club. Maybe the worst thing he can do was raise $2 million for Boys and Girls Club. What a terrible person LeBron ended up being. Also, he started a school. But Lionel Messi is heading to Miami to get out of the spotlight.
It's interesting. The Barcelona statement was President Laporta understood and respected Messi's decision to want to compete in a league with fewer demands, further away from the spotlight, and the pressure he has been subject to in recent years. Felt
I mean they just
spicy.
They sent out a press release of what he had said though, right?
Yeah, I'm curious about the even just like the translation of getting out of the spotlight, but yeah, that's It will be in less of a spotlight. That's just what it is.
But it's not a great look because going to Saudi would be out of the spotlight.
It's also true.
I mean, it's still the United States. It's still soccer in the United States in Miami, where there's going to be coverage. Soccer in Saudi Arabia, like apparently some of the dudes that are on the field are like, working at hotels during the day.
And Ronaldo's apparently already unhappy with his, I think, $300 or $400 million contract annually.
Because he's playing like club soccer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're trying to attract the best talent in the world, but you can't attract the best talent just by paying Ronaldo, hundreds of millions of dollars, and Messi $400 million a year, because then you have to fill out the rest of the roster. So the competition isn't all that great. You'd be out of the spotlight there. So it is kind of interesting, the whole, and I think he was also, I think, trying to make a statement of, I'm not just leaving Barcelona because I'm unhappy. Like, I'm not just leaving if it was all about the money.
And in this case, not going back to Barcelona because he's been in Paris the last couple of years.
Absolutely, but not going back to Barcelona, right. And he said if it was all about the money, I'd go to Saudi Arabia. I would have taken the Saudi Arabian deal if it was all about the money. There's other things into it, being around my family. And when he talks about family time, that's where the statement comes from: less demands, less rigor, less expectations from that standpoint, whereas he could maybe spend a little bit more time with his family, be quote-unquote out of the spotlight. And also the MLS would just be like, Lionel, thank God you're here. Right. You're here. Awesome. You don't want to practice? Great. That's fine. What do you want to do this? That's fine too. Whatever,
And also when you say, spend more time with my family and everything, probably a little easier, a little cooler path to live in Miami rather than Saudi Arabia, which is also apparently another reported portion of why Ronaldo is having some trouble translating, I suppose, to that lifestyle.
Yes.
Miami seems cool. And it will give him an enormous stake in American soccer if he does see that as a long-term thing that he wants to be involved in.
Mm-hmm. So, so he was, the expectation was that he was going to Saudi Arabia. But yesterday, he is choosing to head to Miami to get out of the spotlight. So, great for the MLS. Can't wait to, watch Miami at Sporting Park and Lionel Messi out there playing at Children's Mercy Park. It's phenomenal that's the case. And maybe it was I'm not returning to Barcelona where I had been, as a teenager, and the move a couple of years ago that, am I going to make this return? It's not about them. The level of expectation of play, I am not at a point in my career to match what is expected to play for that prestigious club.
Also, Barcelona's having some money problems right now too,
with the fair play rules and all that stuff. So
they've had their slight issues.
That's fine. Messi is now a member of the MLS, but just interesting that I wanted to get out of the spotlight, so I went to play in the MLS. Well, that certainly can happen. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. Kind of feels, I'm going to hear Ian Rappaport weigh in on DeAndre Hopkins, but it feels a little bit like, it's like, Messi, you want to come to MLS? You don't want to practice? That's fine. Whereas DeAndre Hopkins is like, known for he doesn't want to practice, where there are some teams that are like, yeah, that's not going to fly here. Other teams like, you don't want to practice? Oh, you want to come here? That's great. You just want to play on Sundays? That's great. We have games on Thursday. Not going to play Thursday. That's fine. But Sundays, you are good to go? Great. Gotcha. We are that desperate to bring that guy in. Others may not have that level of desperation. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Wrap up this hour. We'll hear from the Chiefs in the 1 o'clock hour. More Zone next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Well, look, nice weather is finally here, but the storms, the rain, it's here as well. The high winds, the tornadoes, things like that you have to be concerned with, and you want to make sure your roof is in good standing, or if something happens, you want to make sure that roof gets repaired. Your house is more than likely the largest investment you have, and you need to make sure that that thing that takes care of it, that keeps the literal roof over your head, is in good shape. Also, with gutters, gutter repairs, it's Pyramid Roofing, the spot for you, the professionals, 30 years in the business, Pyramid Roofing. If you want a free estimate, give them a call, 816-966-1101. You can check them out, pyramidroofingkc.com, to make sure that it is all taken care of. You don't want to have the storm chasers. When something happens around the area, they come in town, they tell you need this, that, file this insurance claim, and then boom, they're gone. You need something else repaired, you need something fixed, something wasn't done right, you can't get a hold of them. That's not Pyramid Roofing. 30 years in the industry, in the area. Call for a free estimate, 816-966-1101, or check them out, pyramidroofingkc.com.
Join the NBA Finals action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
We'll hear from the Kansas City Chiefs again, Andy Reid, and then I believe it'll be the order will be Blaine Gabbert, then Jawaan Taylor, then Justin Reid, if I have that right. Could have that wrong. Doesn't matter. I'll tell you. Nope, Blaine Gabbert, Justin Reid, Jawaan Taylor. Nailed it. Reid, Gabbert, Reid, Taylor. That may be the order. They may change it up as well. 913-912-4810. Let's hear from Ian Rappaport on the latest on the market for one DeAndre Hopkins now that he is visiting the Tennessee Titans. Here's the report yesterday afternoon from Ian Rappaport.
DeAndre Hopkins is expected to make his first free agent visit early next week in a fly on Sunday, then visit the Tennessee Titans. That is going to be on Monday. This Mike Vrabel confirming earlier today the Tom Pelissero report that Hopkins is set to make his first visit. And you're right, there has been a lot of interest from contenders and certainly some teams that have some money to spend. If you're looking at the profile of the Tennessee Titans, they fit exactly what DeAndre Hopkins is looking for. They got a quarterback who can play, they have a need, they have some money, and they do seem to be a team looking for one final piece for maybe that playoff push. The interesting thing here is the timing. I wouldn't be surprised at all if DeAndre Hopkins, even with a really positive visit to the Tennessee Titans, doesn't sign until maybe even the start of training camp. Rarely do veterans want to go through mandatory minicamp. Veterans especially like to maybe even wait a couple days into training camp just to make sure they get as much rest for their bodies as possible. May end up being the situation for DeAndre Hopkins, or he couldn't end up taking another visit. Either way, plenty of very, very good teams interested in the former Cardinal star receiver.
So he is taking a visit this weekend. I don't expect him to sign anytime soon. We've kind of talked about that, the timeline that Ian Rappaport report said right there, that probably closer to training camp that he would make that decision, even if it's a great visit with the Tennessee Titans. If we remember back, the three things that he said he was looking for after mentioning the specific quarterbacks, he had talked about those. People are looking at it and going, well, he wants to win. How badly does he want to win? Does he want that ring? He said the three things he's looking for: stable management. That was number one. That was talked about. Do the Titans qualify for stable management? I think they qualify for like stable coaching staff and Vrabel, but they did fire their GM mid-season last year. And so, I don't know, is it stable now with the GM? Because he had so many different GMs in his time with Houston and Arizona. That's kind of what he talked about, is just different management group, things like that. He wants a quarterback who loves the game, gets everybody on board, pushes himself and others. That isn't necessarily I need to play with a high-level quarterback, but he did name specific quarterbacks in that interview. Is that Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis that they drafted early in the second round? Malik Willis? Probably not that, but maybe it's Tannehill. I don't know. And number three, great defense, which Tennessee has. Those are the three things he said he's looking for in a team. I think they definitely have number three in great defense. It'd be... we often do this when we hear somebody say something about what they're looking for. We think it's a shot at the previous stop. But when he says, I'm looking for a QB who loves the game, who wants to push everybody and himself, is it a direct shot at Kyler Murray? Because we know about the video games and all of that stuff. But is that Tannehill? Is it Will Levis? I don't know.
A lot of these things could be solved in Kansas City. Just throwing that out there.
Except the great defense.
They're working on it.
They're getting there.
You know what? I think the defense would be okay with that offense.
Hopkins, a really good offense helps out the defense, too.
Trust is a big deal, especially when it comes to your health. This is Jeff for Heartland Men's Health, and if you're a man suffering...
Juwan Taylor here in just a little bit out at the practice facilities. Last week, hearing from the assistant coaches, a lot of talk around Dave Tobe and the kickoff rule and his comments with that, and going to be aggressive and still return the kick, even if it's a higher kick down inside the 10, the 5-yard line, that they're still going to do that. There was a lot of talk around those comments last week from Dave Tobe, and then, of course, Steve Spagnuolo and Matt Nagy, and we heard from Todd Pinkston, and we heard from Connor Embry. We haven't heard from Juwan Taylor since he signed the contract, correct? And that was when it was, you're going to be a left tackle, and here's Andy Reid.
So I'll start with Norma Hunt. We're obviously sad that she passed away. The thing that gets you through these things is trying to focus on the good times, and we had so many good times with her, and just the picture, the image of her greeting Lamar up there kind of fires me up, and it'll be a great reunion, and there's such love between them and the family. So we're here to support them, the family, and our memories of Norma are great. So with that, it's good to get these guys out here working. They're working their tail off. This week has been all against opponents. So the AFC West, and then our first opponent against the Lions. So we got some work. We got the Lions tomorrow. We've had the AFC West the last 3 days. So, but the guys are working hard. They're challenging each other within the rules that you're confined to. So, but it's a good foundation for them as we work into the veteran mini camp, and then into training camp. Most of all, they'll at least have a foundation there going up to St. Joe. Anyways, with that, time's yours.
Hey, just early impressions of Sky Moore.
Sky's worked real hard this offseason, so he looks like he's on the same page with Patrick. He's doing a nice job, and again, we just, in these camps, he's been doing a real nice job. Let's keep on advancing as we go, and he'll do that because he's wired right to do that.
Andy, you learn anything about Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor from a few weeks of coaching those guys now?
Yeah, so this is all pass game. There's no run game, and then the defensive line pulls off, once they get up the field. So, but listen, they're smart guys. They're taking good sets and doing the things that they're supposed to do, and you can tell that they've played before. They're handling themselves right, but and digging in on the new protections and the snap count in itself, and all those things. Make sure they're ready once we get up to training camp.
When you've had turnover at the receiver position, especially like the last couple of years, and you've got not only new guys coming in, but then rookies coming in as well, is there a custom game plan as far as how you prep each one of those guys and get them up to speed, or is there a one-size-fits-all approach? How do you do it when you got that many new players?
Yeah, well, you kind of teach them the whole as you're going, one day at a time. So the whole to the part and not the part to the whole. So we give them the whole shebang, then we break it down for them in little pods each day, although they have all the information that they can go look at the big picture of things. So but we try to taper the individual practices into a pretty tight window there for them, so they can focus in on what they need to.
Sorry, Coach.
You're right.
On the eve of the veteran mini camp, when the rookies get here, everything's so new. I just wonder, from a skill position standpoint, what your thoughts have been on Rashee Rice and Deneric Prince so far.
Yeah, I think they've both have done a nice job. Again, I think the volume and the tempo and all those things, the newness of the plays, they're in a huddle, you know what I'm saying? So that's all, and the speed that we go at, and then the speed obviously that the defense presents. So they're in the different coverages. So they're working through all that, and that's a positive.
With Deneric specifically, we saw him make a catch out there. What have you learned about him with
Which one?
Deneric Prince?
Yeah,
saw him make a
yeah.
catch.
No, listen, I saw Veach over there coaching you guys up at night. He's got really good hands. I mean, and it looked like he caught one right when Veach was there, so in the end zone right in front of you guys. But he's done a nice job. Again, that's part of the game. So another part is the running game, which we're not doing, except versus air. And so we'll have to see how all of that goes once we get there. But he's a sharp kid. He's got skill, it looks like. I mean, he's big and can run and has a good feel for things right now.
Coach Felix had been limited at rookie camp. It seems like he's coming along now. Is he back to full and everything's okay?
Yeah, he is. He had that surgery, the thumb surgery, and then had a hamstring too. And so he's worked through all that, and he's back in the swing, and looks like he's feeling better every day, which is a good thing.
What was it like being around last year's team at the White House? Maybe some guys like EB, Frank Clark, some guys who have gone on to other places. What stands out from that group of what y'all?
I'll tell you what, it was great. You know what was neat? I mentioned it to you down there that you put all the politics aside. So you're not Democrat, you're not Republican, you're not independent. You're an American, and I thought that was the neatest part of the thing. That everybody was just enjoying the history, and they laid out a spread for us of food that was great, and the hospitality was phenomenal. They had different military guys in each of the rooms. They let us go in, and the guys were experts on the paintings and the architecture and whose special room this was and that room. And so you got the history, everything from the oldest table to the oldest picture. You got the history of that, and I think the guys appreciated that part. And then, listen, President Biden spent a ton of time with the guys and myself and some of the coaches there. So he's obviously a Delaware fan, and we got a lot of those Blue Hens on our team, so, and the coaches, Frank's there, and Brett. So he spent a ton of time with us, more than we thought. We were thinking maybe 10 minutes you get from the president, but he was very giving there, yeah.
Did you go with Green Bay back in the day, or was this
I did, yeah. Oh, Green Bay. It was a little different than that. Some of the restrictions are tighter now, but they tried not to make you feel that way. That we were it, and they appreciated us being there. I mean, it was like I said, the hospitality was phenomenal. My hat goes off to them.
How impactful was it for you and the other guys and people in the organization who were here in 19 and didn't get that experience then to get it now?
Yeah, it was kind of fun. I mentioned that, when I had a chance to talk, that we're enjoying the heck out of this thing. I mean, and I wish all the guys from that team could have been there too, but it was great. That was great. And we had a ton. They divided off, which I know some of you guys were there, but they divided off the crowd. So you had the team and the Chiefs on the organization on one side, and then on the other side you had people that were Chief fans and that live either in D.C. and work or in the surrounding area there. So, and both sides were fully loaded. There were a lot of people, and that was kind of fun to see. And then the people that were outside by the buses, they let people get relatively close there, and again, the support was great. You felt that for the guys and the guys that left had a blast with it. They just jumped in like it was not, like they were still on the team and rolling. So.
How different has the experience been this time with the demands of everybody's time? Because after 54 with COVID, there was none of this kind of hoopla and everything.
Yeah. So in a weird way, I think they were excited to have us there, just because of that. President Biden had played football at Delaware, so he was. I'm sure it's a breath of fresh air where he didn't have to worry about talking to the guys. He could just talk to them, and he did. And I think the guys loved that part. I think he loved it. So it was neat.
Couple more guys.
Coach Reed, you have Chiefs night game coming up on Monday. I don't know if you saw Travis Kelce throw out the first pitch at Cleveland.
Yeah, he's been working hard.
Yeah, have you been coaching him on?
Yeah, I think Pat has. Yeah, Pat's been on him. He's working hard at it. I think you're going to get a better performance this time. He can throw now. It's just good straight there.
Coach, so much of Kadarius since he's been here is just making sure that he stays on the field. He looks good from all views, but how has he been feeling day to day?
Yeah, no, he's doing good. So it's good to have him out there, and I think he's having fun, and developing a relationship there with everybody and the quarterback in particular.
Nate and then Nick.
Andy, you mentioned how the food was excellent at the White House. Can you give specifics as to what was all involved in the spread?
Yeah, so they did have some good stuff. They had a grill. I've never had this before. So a French toast, grilled cheese, and ham sandwich that they sprinkled a little bit of powdered sugar on. I mean, it was phenomenal. The guys were, and there was abundance of this, and then they had chicken fingers, exotic chicken fingers to boot, and then maybe the best part was they had, which I hadn't seen before, but little bite-sized squares of the heart of the watermelon. So whoever, my hat went off to the chef. I went back and talked to him. I mean, I just go, you guys are unbelievable. I mean, whoever cut all of that out and had the patience to do that, that goes off to them.
All right.
All right, so a French toast, grilled cheese, and ham sandwich. That's what I took away from that entire press conference.
Powdered sugar.
With some powdered sugar sprinkled on it. They had some exotic chicken fingers, but it was exotic chicken. Like, is that like a different species or a different type, like a rare type of chicken, or is it like a way that you serve this dish? It's just, now, the chicken fingers you're eating, this is a specific type of chicken that comes from East Asia, and it's very rare to get. So just enjoy this very exotic chicken that you're eating.
Cincinnati chicken. Hey, well, hold on. Is an exotic chicken actually just an eagle? Think about it. Pretty sure they're protected, but
yeah, that would be odd if that's what they were serving.
If there was anywhere you could serve eagle, it would be at the White House. I mean,
yeah, they probably wouldn't do that. Here's Jawan Taylor.
With Donovan, and just what was it like to join him to the team, knowing that you guys are going to be the two ends of the offensive line?
When I heard he was coming, it was so glad. I was glad to hear it, man. He's a great player. I've been knowing him for years. We connect because we had the same offensive line coach, George Warhawk. So that's how we knew about each other for the past few years.
When you first signed there had been some talk about you jumping over the left side. Has it been a relief in the sense that you're just going to stick to the right side, or how did you take the news?
I'm just here to help the team win, man, wherever the team needs me. I told Coach Reed if they need me on the left, I'll play the left. They need me on the right, I'll play the right. So, I feel like I'm athletic to do either one, so wherever the team needs me, I'm there.
And I didn't know we're a long time away from this, but in a situation where in game you need to slide over, do you think you feel comfortable?
Oh, yeah, for sure, definitely, and especially learning the offense now, learning the system, I'll be ready.
Coming from Jacksonville, Coach Peterson, a lot of times with him and Coach Reed. Have you seen any similarities in the playbook so far?
Oh, yeah, definitely similarities. I feel like it's a few more moving parts in this offense, a little more advanced for the offensive line. But, I've been learning it, and I've been enjoying it.
How much more advanced is it?
Oh, not crazy, not too much more advanced, because it's definitely similar. But it's definitely a great scheme.
Coach Reed talks about this is a passing camp, and when it comes to the offensive line, you can't really touch each other and everything.
Right.
How do you use your time? What are you learning this time of year?
Really just soaking in everything I can soak in from Coach Heck. Just tweaking and adjusting different things with my game just to make me better. So anything I can do to do that, I've been soaking it in, just taking notes in meetings, but also just learning the system, learning how they like things done around here, and just doing my part.
Do you find that there are maybe some specific things that Coach Heck wants you to do as far as either scheme-wise or technique-wise that's maybe different than what you've done in the past?
Not really. Just just tweaking different things, just adjusting small things. Different techniques, but not changing too much. But it's always room for improvement.
How do you perfect your technique in this side of camp?
Really just doing it in Indy, and then everything you do in Indy, just carry it over the team. So when I go against the guys, of course we can't do too much, but definitely try to take meaningful reps every time I'm out there.
Are y'all seeing the chemistry kind of form with the five that y'all have so far?
Oh, most definitely. We have a very good O-line room, not just the five and the ones, but also the rest of the guys. Very, very good group of guys.
How much time off the field have you spent with some of these guys in the room? I know that in previous years, the offensive line would have get-togethers and things like that.
I spent a lot of time with them so far. Pretty much every week we try to do something fun, whether we go to dinners or do something like that, just to build a relationship and build that bond with each other. But I've been enjoying it. Everybody here is very welcoming.
Have y'all had the big man steakhouse dinner yet?
Yes, we did. Actually, Pat took us out last week. We went to Ocean Prime. It was really good. Everybody enjoyed each other, but it was good.
What kind of steak you get?
I didn't get a steak that night. I think I got some sushi, and I just tried some of the appetizers and stuff. I didn't go too crazy. No, I didn't pay.
Go ahead, last one. I know Donovan said that he had heard a lot about at Andy Reid training camp.
Mhm.
From your vantage point, what have some of the veterans told you about what to expect when the team does go to St. Joe?
Just be in shape. That's really it. Just be in shape and be ready to go. We heard it's hard, but we definitely got to make sure we show up in shape and ready to go.
All right.
Thank y'all.
All right, there's Juwan Taylor holding court. Apparently, Juwan Taylor. I do love the conversation, though, that, left side, right side. I told Coach Reid, you can play me on the right side, I'll play on the right side. Play me on the left side, that's what I'll do. Whatever it takes to help the team win. Again, we've noted this, talked about it, but it is a difference of approach than the previous left tackle. That was, I'm here to play left tackle. I'm a left tackle. I'm playing left tackle. I'm playing left tackle. Juwan Taylor got paid to then maybe move to left tackle, and his point was, where do you want me? I'll play there. Justin Reid up the podium.
I didn't know what to expect when we first went out there, but it was a good time. I'm like an information junkie too, so I really liked the art curators there, talking about the artwork and the furniture, and then we got to talk to some of the corporals and Marines and Secret Service officers. It's really cool.
What information did you kind of retain from some of that?
Well, the best story I got for you. One of our curators was telling me about this portrait that was hanging up, and said that maybe 60, 70 years ago, this American family took a trip to India, and they saw this portrait. It's covered in dirt, muddy, whatever. So they ended up going to the store, and the people who were selling it sold it for $7, but wanted to keep the frame, right? So they kept the frame. They get the portrait, bring it back to America. Turns out it was an original painting of like Philadelphia from like colonial time or whatever. Portrait's worth $300 million. They bought it for $7. It was freaking nuts. So it was like, there's a couple stories like that. And then we got the tour, the main level. And most of the time when you have public tours, they have it roped off. And we got to actually go and like be in it and sit on the furniture. Me and a couple guys got to go talk to some of the White House staff about our experiences and championship habits and handling pressure, and give our insights to it. So it was really unique.
How tough is it, because you have that moment and you're going to have the ring ceremony, I believe, next week. How tough do you think it's going to be to like turn the page in a sense, and knowing that you have to do it? I know this will be the first time in your career you have to do it.
Honestly, the page is already turned. Like we're out there working. We're out there chasing another championship. We're starting to build a new culture. Every year is different. It's a new team. We know nothing's going to be given to us. We got an even bigger target on our back than we did last year. Now we get to take a moment every once in a while to go back in the history book or the yearbook and enjoy that moment and have some of our former players, Juan and Juju and some of those guys come back. You get to talk to them a little bit. But as far as the mentality in the room, we're working to continue this dynasty and continue to build on what we did last year, not just rest on our laurels of what we already did.
And speaking of turning the page, it seems like Brian is really not shy in
Love it.
getting involved.
Love it. Super Brian Cook.
Yeah.
Super vocal guy. Where we are right now, as far as last year, we had so many new faces, myself included. Where we are right now on the communication side and really knowing the defense, we're light years ahead of where we were last year. It's really exciting. You can feel it in the communication and the energy out there. Guys know the program now. We're bought into the system. And it's about bringing the new guys now that we have along and catching them up. And I think it'll be easier to do than last year because last year there's just so many new faces. It just takes a little bit longer to bring it all together. But this year, Chuck's been doing well. We want to keep bringing guys along. Really like Drew Tranquil a lot. He's been adjusting really nicely.
Specific to you, where do you think you made that biggest jump going from being a new face last year to this year coming off the White House visit?
Oh man, the confidence. Like I'm a guy. I see myself as a play caller on defense. I enjoy the X's and O's, the checks, really getting everybody situated, putting the best position, and then playing a couple of different roles from strong safety to free safety to dime linebacker to sometimes kicker. Like having confidence in those roles and not having to be out there and think. And just be able to play, like as offenses make shifts to make those adjustments rapidly, have ourselves in the right positions and leverages, and to play fast at that point, really start to take the game to a new level. And I think in the second half of the year you start to see that, and I'm planning to continue that progression this year.
What about you? When did you start to feel comfortable with what you were doing last year?
About a week or two after the first time we played the Bengals. A week or two after that, I really started to get it down because we do a lot of stuff, man. We do a lot of stuff, and then we had a lot of new faces, so it's kind of hard because there wasn't as much help So, so we're all like kind of, trying to figure it out together. But this year, guys are just so much sharper just from having experience in the team, that the comfort level is so much higher and the confidence is higher.
So not that long with the not many regular season games. I mean, just a few games to go.
Mm-hmm.
That was when you kind of got that down.
It definitely there is a little bit of a steeper learning curve here than maybe some other football programs just because of the depth of the playbook. But once guys get it, man, it's really exciting and electric because the pressure's hit home. I mean, Coach Spags and the defensive staff and offensive staff do a phenomenal job game planning. They challenge us with the load of it, but in the end, it makes us a better team.
Spags always talks about the volume that you guys had, and you throw at the rookies, and I'm sure that you experienced last year. What do you make of Spags and his system, and how impressed are you that we can do so many different things with that?
Well, it makes it extremely hard to game plan. I've been a part of systems where you might go into a game with, 6 or 7 plays, and we want to just do what we do. And in this system, we go into a game with 30 plays. So it's extremely difficult for opposing offenses to try and game plan for that because we want to have a different pressure schemed up for you every week. You're not going to know what's going to come. So as long as guys are in tune and run the pressures correctly, typically they hit home.
Justin, there's a few guys around the league who run into problems with the NFL's gambling rules.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like guys understand what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do in terms of?
I think that we can clear it up a little bit. I think that there has been some trial and error, some unfortunate incidents. As far as my experience personally, like talking about how even making bets inside of the locker room, you had some guys suspended from Detroit for about that, even if it wasn't on NFL games. Just the instance of making a bet on anything inside a locker room is an infraction, right? So I think that having some more clarity on those details and really driving it home, I think that guys now know the severity of it. Because it's starting to happen a couple of times now. Calvin really just getting reinstated from it, and guys, this happened this year. So just some awareness and some caution and some leadership there, I think will help.
Justin, looking at how we're hoping these young DBs can grow going into this season, how much of a benefit do you think it was that not only did they play last year, but like Jalen, Joshua, Brian, they made huge plays in the NFC title game and the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think that leaps and bounds for their confidence because Josh makes the plays against Devontae Adams, arguably the best wide receiver in the league. Jalen Watson coming up with a big-time pick in the Cincinnati Bengals game in the playoff game to really ice the game. I think that moments like that allow them the confidence to be like, I'm a player here and I deserve and I've earned my spot here, but not to become satisfied with that, but to continue to work and drive it. We have a competitive atmosphere to work, but still to have pelts on the wall, have those moments, I think is huge for their confidence and makes us all a better team.
With the softball game coming up tomorrow, is there anything you're kind of looking forward to with it?
We got a couple of guys that claim they're pretty good baseball players, so I'm excited to see them put their money where their mouth is and see some guys swing for the fences on the home run derby. I'm going to get out there. I'm not making any promises, but we have some other defensive players that have a baseball background. B. Cook is one of them, so we get to see what those guys got.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir.
All right, there's Justin Reed. The beginning there when got the huge laugh from the audience, said the White House was sick. That's what the kids like to say these days.
Man, a different thing right after the Super Bowl that they didn't go to the White House for. Everyone's
different
a lot
reasons.
of sickness.
Here's Blaine Gabbert.
Thank you. Yeah. It's good to be home.
An obligatory NBC.
Yeah.
What was it about Kansas City? What made your decision to come here?
It was pretty easy, just talking to Chad Henne for a while, then having the chance to talk to Coach Reed and kind of pick their brains, see what they wanted in a backup, see how Chad enjoyed it. Talking to Daniel Kilgore, who played here, Blake Bell. It was a very easy decision. Coach Reed's always been a guy and a coach that I've watched from afar, and how he handles himself, how he handles the organizations that he represents, and it's nothing but first class. And it's been that way since I've been here.
Specifically, what did Chad tell you about this?
He loved it. He spoke extremely highly of the entire coaching staff, not only Coach Reed, but Nags, Girardi, all the guys that we work with on a daily basis. And I think he was here for 5 years. And he's somebody that I trust his opinion on. And being last year, I think it was his 15th year, so he's been around the block quite a bit. And he spoke very highly of the organization. And really, it was an easy sell at that point.
What type of player would you say that the Chiefs fans were asking left tackle in Donovan Smith and what he brings to the table?
Extremely gifted. one of the most athletic, physically gifted left tackles that I've seen in going on 13 years now. And I told Patrick when we all got here, I was like, he's going to help this team a lot. He's going to help solidify that front with JT and Donnie on the edges and our interior guys. That's got to be the best, if not the best, offensive line in the NFL.
How much do you feel like his injuries set him back last year?
You know, injuries are a part of the game, and sometimes they're hard to play through. And Donnie's an extremely tough player. As you guys know, he's been one of the most durable offensive linemen through the first 8-9 years of his career. And you know, some things he got nicked up last year, so it was a down year. And I know he's going to want to play well this year, and he's going to play well. He's a great friend. He's a great football player.
Being in the room with Tom and then being in the room with Pat, do you see these similarities there, maybe in how they approach their craft?
They're maniacal perfectionists. And I mean that in the most endearing way possible. They're the two best, in my opinion, to ever play the game. To see the similarities, kind of how they operate in the meeting room, on the practice field. Now they're completely different players, as we all know. But the way they approach the game on and off the football field is the exact same way, and you can see why they both had such sustained success early on and then throughout their careers.
How do you see that in Pat?
Just his attention to detail. He's a master of the system. He's been in it now, I think, going on 7 years. He still approaches it like it's day one, still taking notes the same way as he did as a rookie, as all quarterbacks do. You need to kind of refresh every single year, and there's always something he wants to work on, always something to improve on, always something to get better at.
How has the learning process of Andy Reid's system been for you so far?
It's been fun. I guess I would say I'm pretty good at learning offenses now at this point in my career, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it's been a blast. It's definitely been refreshing being in the last system for 4 years, really 5 going back to Arizona with Bruce. It's been a nice change of pace. Just a lot of studying, a lot of FaceTimes with Girardi, just going over the plays, going over the script. So it's just like back to school for the first day.
Blaine, obviously, you can help the team if you get in there or Patrick gets hurt, but what are some other ways you hope to help this team?
Just wisdom, experience. I've been around a lot of teams, a lot of coaches, a lot of offensive systems. So just asking, not really the quote dumb question, but just kind of starting conversations on seeing things different ways, doing things different ways. It just kind of engages people and kind of see like a 10,000-foot view of football.
You see you doing that with Pat too, challenging him and talking to him?
Yeah, it's just high-level football questions because there's so many ways to skin a cat. There's so many ways to complete a pass, run a concept. And every coaching staff, every tree, every scheme is different. And I haven't yet to be in this system before, so it's definitely a learning curve. But if we can just take bits and pieces from every system I've been in and just apply it, start a conversation, that's a good thing.
Blaine, there's a undrafted guy in the backfield with you, Deneric Prince, for much of this OTA section.
Mm-hmm.
Just how do you try to help someone who's very new to the league, who obviously wasn't drafted, and trying to sort of bring them along?
For being a rookie, he's doing a tremendous job. He's a lot of fun to be back there. He had a great catch today on a deep ball that Pat threw him, which it was unbelievable to see a rookie running back, especially a big running back like that, jump, twist, and catch a back shoulder. So he's doing a great job. He'll be a lot of fun to watch in training camp when we get the pads on in the preseason games and the regular season, because he's definitely be a load getting downhill.
Do you keep up with Mizzou football at all? Go back to Columbia?
We were just talking about that, actually. My buddy Justin Smith, who was a longtime D tackle in the NFL, I played with him in San Francisco. He lived in Columbia there for a while, but I've not been back. There's been so much turnover there the last 13, 14 years, so it's been tough to keep track. But, you know, they're doing well in the SEC, but I'm a Big 12 guy at heart, so tough to see that one go. I miss the KU-Nebraska rivalries, but no, they're doing well, but I don't know. I can't get behind the SEC stuff.
Blaine, what's kind of stood out for you with the wide receiver group so far?
Young and talented. Those guys are eager to learn, and it's nice having a young group of guys that are just absorbing information, and they're working extremely hard. And it's a lot of fun to work with. I've been fortunate the last few years to work with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Gronk. So I'm just seeing how that level of player worked and their work habits. I try and help the young guys kind of emulate those work habits and bring them along.
And kind of getting to see Travis firsthand, day in, day out, what's kind of really impressed you?
He's the best. He has a rare feel for the game of football. I usually say, like, he sees the game like a quarterback. knows when to sit down, when to get open, when to get his head around. So to have a guy like that being so close to you with the tight end position, it's an invaluable asset that we have. And he's been such a great player for so long, and he's doing great as always.
Anything else?
Chase was backing up.
Yeah, Chase was here. Shoot, yeah. So I talked to Chase about it, and he loved it here. There's been a lot of guys that have come through here that I know, and Chase, Chad, Kilgore, all the guys. So I spoke very highly of this place.
Last one.
Blaine, you were talking about Travis earlier. It seems like he's going to get another shot at redemption with the ceremonial first pitch as a quarterback. Any advice for him, in terms of throwing that?
Yeah, we call that the old 50-footer you threw. But I think mounds are 60 feet 6 inches, but you just got to get the release point right. It's tough throwing a football compared to a baseball, and a baseball, especially when throwing a football, feels a little light in the hands. Like, I don't know, I may throw one off the backstop too the first time.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, man.
All right, there's Blaine Gabbert. 50 feet, that was a 15-foot pitch by Travis Kelce. 50 feet would have been much better, but that was a spike. That was almost a Gronk spike from the mound. We'll see what Travis Kelce's first pitch looks like on Monday. But there's Blaine Gabbert talking to a number of different people that were around the Chiefs organization before as players and what it was like to play for the Chiefs, one of the reasons why he wanted to come here and be the backup to Patrick Mahomes, and then talking about Donovan Smith and what he can bring to the table as someone that played with Donovan Smith the last couple of years with him as his left tackle, as a backup to Tom Brady. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, react to the things we heard from Andy Reid, Juwan Taylor, Justin Reid, and Blaine Gabbert. More Zone on a Thursday right after this at Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe and Drake. We head up until 2 o'clock. You heard from the Chiefs there, Andy Reid and Jawaan Taylor and Justin Reid and Blaine Gabbert there at the podium. Andy Reid talking just about, in general, what he's seeing from the offensive line, and has pointed out a couple of times, look, this is it's really just a passing camp. It's all we're really doing, and it's not a lot of contact, and it's really just going through trying to learn as much as you can about the scheme, about the playbook, the offense. It's really trying to familiarize yourself with those things. That's what this is about, just getting as many reps as possible. And the funny ha-ha from Jawaan Taylor of what did he tell you, with training camp and everything, to be in shape. You better be in shape for Andy Reid's training camp. It's going to be different than other training camps. So, him talking about that and what he's seen from a couple of other players and the experience at the White House and all of that stuff. And, Jawaan Taylor talking about that. Blaine Gabbert, not at the White House, but talking about some of the players with the Chiefs and Donovan Smith and things like that. Justin Reid talking about the defense, but it goes a little bit back to last week when Steve Spagnuolo was at the podium, and he was asked about the communication, I should say, between Jalen Watson and Snead and McDuffie and Williams and Brian Cook and guys like that from a year ago to now. And I think the phrase that Spagnuolo used was night and day. Like, it's just light years ahead of what it was last year, like the communication, because obviously this time a year ago, those guys are still trying to figure out what the verbiage is. Like, I want them to do this, but what's that call? What are we doing with this particular play? And now they're just communicating and talking, and he's like, snapping his fingers, boom, 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 where guys are supposed to be. That's incredibly encouraging. But hearing from Justin Reid, the one thing that we both said that sort of stood out as we're talking about maybe bigger takeaways rather than just funny little anecdotes of the trip to the White House and Blaine Gabbert's time playing with Donovan Smith is Justin Reid saying, week 13 was...
That was the Bengals game.
When they got comfortable?
Weeks after the Bengals game is what his phrase was there. So week 14, 15, 16.
When they started to become comfortable with the defense... I mean, that's we know that with Steve Spagnuolo's defenses, right? Don't we typically hear him say as the season goes on? Yes. And that was also an expectation for this team that, hey, this is going to be a bigger learning curve. It might be a slower burn to this season than it was in 2019 when they had all the new guys there. And, wow, after week 9 or 10, whatever it was after that Tennessee Titans game on the road when they had the bye and they came back and they were a number 7 defense the rest of the way through the Super Bowl, and a big reason why they won the Super Bowl was how well the defense played. And hey, they got it together and learning Steve Spagnuolo's defense. This one was not only that, but you're adding in rookies. You're adding in McDuffie, who's going to be starting at cornerback. You're adding in Watson and Williams, guys that are going to be nickelbacks. You're adding in Brian Cook, who's the third safety. You're adding in Justin Reid, who is a veteran, but is also learning the system for the first time. That, we thought it was going to be an adjustment. And, if you'd have said before the year that, hey, Justin Reid, who's really freaking brilliant, like not even just football-wise, like he's just really smart, that if he says it's going to be a few weeks after that Bengals game, which was week 13, like 14, 15, 16, before they got a real handle on the defense, a real comfort with the defense, I wouldn't have said this team's record was 11-3 or 12-3.
Yeah.
I would not have told you that. Unless, especially with what's the offense going to look like without Tyreek Hill?
Mm-hmm.
No Tyreek Hill. Young guys in the secondary. This is a step-back year for the Chiefs. And yet, when that comfort started to come in with this team, defensively, at least according to Justin Reid, this team was 11-3, 12-3, and that Bengals game was the last loss of the year for this team. They lose by 3 on the road in Cincinnati, in which they had a 7-point lead with the ball driving. It was the last time they lost a football game. If it wasn't for that game, it would have been the Bills, on October 16th, with all the new parts and all the learning curve.
And I think it's interesting that he uses that game as the signpost, because it wasn't after the Bengals game. He was a few weeks after that. Now, that could just be because it was the last loss, and that would really sting. But I heard that and thought, oh, they must have had some communication issues in that game defensively. I don't have any plays that jump to mind right now, but
that entire final drive when they had the tackles, when they missed tackles, they had the issues there. The little passes underneath to Samaje Perine, and all of a sudden he'd pick up 10 yards because nobody was there.
And then that next week you have the game in Denver where they give up 28 points. The week after that they're in Houston and they get taken to overtime. And then the Seattle game, defense was great. Denver was close again. They closed out great against Vegas, and then the defense was really good through the playoffs.
Yeah.
But one of the best uses of press conference time in the really early hours of an offseason like this is to basically go back and fact check to see if we got lied to a little bit last year.
Yeah.
And I always like that from guys like Justin Reed, who, and I don't, to be clear, I don't think this is a bad misleading by any means. But in real time, if we say, hey, it's week 6, are you guys comfortable with the defense? He's not going to go, no, I am a deer in the headlights. And frankly, I don't think that would have been the true answer either. Comfort here is going to be a scale or a spectrum. How much more confident and comfortable can you get with what's going on around you? And we saw them gel more as the year went on, even earlier in the year. We saw those rookies immediately make a positive impact. But still, you can imagine that being thrown into the NFL, and then even with a guy like Justin Reed, one of the leaders of that defense and probably the leader of the secondary, he's still in his first year with Spags. Like, there's just so many moving parts that now I think we're way more likely to get the completely honest answer once the Super Bowl is won, the White House visit has been made, the rings have been minted, it's just not handed out yet. Now you can look back and say, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, even if it was really honestly true at the time that he felt comfortable in week 6 or 8 or whatever, to go back and say, yeah, you know, now that I have the benefit of this entire picture of how comfortable we were by the playoffs, I really see us getting better for the first 15 weeks of the season, and I'm guessing he'll be more comfortable by week 5 this year, and then week 10 this year, and that's always going to continue to gel more and more. But it is also really exciting to think about so many of those huge parts last year being in a similar spot now where none of this is brand new to them and they're just building on top of the foundation they laid last year.
Well, I think it comes with, information at the time. I think if you, like you said, if you'd asked him in week 6, getting ready for the Buffalo Bills game, and this team was 4-1 and they played the Raiders the week before, and that was that close game where it should have been the sack strip fumble for Chris Jones, and then it was the Devontae Adams and Renfro running into each other, and the Chiefs win that game by 1 point and all of that. If you'd asked him after that, he might have said, oh, yeah, we're comfortable, with the calls, because I would guess you don't know what you don't know at that point.
That's right.
What I'd want to know, and I wish, in fact, Spags and the coordinators maybe we're talking next week, and who knows who's going to talk after the mandatory minicamp. It'd be great if we heard from coordinators, because now I want to know at what point in the season was Spags comfortable with them, because he had talked about it's going to be a little more generic. It's got to be a little more vanilla at the beginning of the season. You can't do some of the exotic things that Steve Spagnuolo likes to do, being multidimensional in the back end with guys that you don't know are all going to be on the same page, and you don't know for a fact that every single player out there knows what he's supposed to do here. But when you got a group and a veteran that's been around, or a veteran group that's been around, you've played with, you've coached with, you have a level of expectation of a certain play call and how it's going to be executed. And when you've got, at certain times, McDuffie, Williams, Watson, and Cook on the field as rookies in the NFL, and then along with Reed, who's, a first-year in the system player, you got 5 of your 11 guys that are, and throw in George Karlaftis, heck, you got 6 of your 11 guys that could be rookies or first-year players out on the field that are supposed to be out there executing something in a call where, as speaking of exotic chickens, but sometimes as exotic of the calls are from Steve Spagnuolo, I wonder at what point in the year did he feel like, okay, they might feel comfortable with this, with what I'm giving them. How comfortable am I when I get into all of the play calls that I like to do, that I could have done a year ago with Tyrann Mathieu and these guys, or the year before that, or 2020 maybe, when I was most comfortable with those players from 19 that won and then returning in 2020. That's now what I would like to know, if there's an honest assessment, a truth serum, and Spags typically gives you that, of at what point did you feel like, I know I can call all these plays I want to call, and there's a level of expectation and execution and understanding that's out there on the field?
I think he would half seriously, half jokingly begin and answer that question with, I'm never comfortable because I think there's a grain of truth to that. Where not that he is pulling out his hair watching rookies run around, because I think he trusted those guys way before he felt like he had deployed his whole playbook. And I'd bet anything that there is stuff that they're installing right now that they never touched last year, and certainly in training camp, and then certainly as the year comes around. This is totally like, this is an echo of a memory, but I have some recollection of Spags talking about like a 3-year build up to kind of everything that he has schematically, terminology wise, and it's also going to change depending on the weapons that you have. I mean, so it's always tinkering, right? There is no final installment of the playbook where I think Spags, hits enter and then leans back and says, well, we're done coaching for the year, because it's always going to be adjusting to that. But he's got to be just thrilled right now. And again, we talked about this after the draft last year. Not just thrilled right now with how much further along they are than where they were this time last season, but with this idea that you might have the same nucleus of maybe not all your superstars, but you might have 6 starters who play together for 5 straight years, or 4, I guess, depending on the rookie deals, because a lot of them are later round picks. But you might have 3 of your starting corners be in your organization for 3 or 4 years consistently. And that's just got to make the communication even easier, because that's hard to build. And there is a lot of communicating that happens in a very short period of time at the NFL level. And the Chiefs are just going to be looking better at that now than they were even after it got better late last year.
If they extend L'Jarius Sneed, or if he has one more year, maybe you franchise tag him at the end of this year.
Yep.
If he plays another year with the Kansas City Chiefs, as you mentioned, a 3-year buildup, that would be 3 years of having McDuffie, Sneed, Watson, Williams, Justin Reed, and Brian Cook. It would be going into year 3. So that 3-year, that build up to year 3, you'd have 2 years of those guys. You'd have at least 1 full year of Reed and Cook at safety, but you'd have Cook playing a good portion of his rookie year as a third safety. You'd have Watson and Williams that played a good portion, especially when Trent McDuffie was out. You've got Sneed that would be entering year 5 in the system for him, because he's going into year 4 this year, and also McDuffie going into to year 3 of the understanding of the system. Your entire secondary would have 2 full years and off seasons of Steve Spagnuolo's defense getting ready for that year. I'm assuming L'Jarius Sneed is going to be extended. It's not a surprise, or I should say it's not coincidental or just random that Patrick Mahomes, when he was asked about his contract a couple of weeks ago and, wanting to be the highest paid player or not, and he was talking about, I have a responsibility to, the peers out there, the other quarterbacks, that, my contract that helps continue to elevate other players' contracts at the quarterback position, but it's about winning and other guys getting paid like Chris and L'Jarius. That wasn't coincidental or random that he mentioned Sneed and other guys getting a contract. It's the first time somebody's quite frankly mentioned like L'Jarius Sneed when we're talking about these things, and Patrick Mahomes does that. Not prompted of, hey, what other players would you like to see get paid on your team this offseason? No, he was talking about guys, because last time he went through this, he called Chris Jones and said, I left money on the table. Go get a contract done. And he did. Now he's going through this, the same offseason that Chris Jones wants an extension, and also L'Jarius Sneed is going into the final year of his deal. Those guys are on defense, and Patrick Mahomes is talking about leaving money on the table, or you have to think about those guys when you're looking at the bigger picture of a Chris Jones and a L'Jarius Sneed. I would imagine that Sneed is a big priority for this team, especially if you're talking about Steve Spagnuolo in what his defense is. So I'd be shocked if he wasn't on the team next year. So it's not only about you're not just trying to fast forward to next year. This team won a Super Bowl in year 1.
With all of that.
Yes.
Tumult.
Yeah, and this is now year 2 with all of these guys that have a better understanding, and you're hoping maybe a more effective pass rush with Karlaftis year number 2, FAU being a guy that like baseline is going to be able to pressure the quarterback, Chris Jones doing the things he does, Ominahu on the squad as well. Like, you can start to throw those different back end coverages that maybe you didn't have at the first part of last year. So does that now make the front four's job a little bit easier too? Like that whole thing working in concert.
I think it probably should. And you've also got a pretty unified front four as well. Think about, again, comparing to last year, how many new faces. So rookies are guys their first year with the team. This year, the Chiefs, I think, are guaranteed to have one starting spot taken by a guy who's in his first year with the Chiefs, because Charles Omenihu or Felix Udike-Uzomah will start at defensive end. Keandre Coburn could overtake Derek Nottie in training camp. Drew Tranquill could end up being one of the most used linebackers on this team. That starting 2, starting 3, whatever. But that's as deep as I'm willing to go. And again, the only spot where you would say like, oh, something bad may have happened would be that Omenihu-Felix combo. And if Mike Dana technically gets the start in week 1 at one of the edge spots, that wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. It is just, you talk about night and day. If that's the phrase Spags used, he's right, because it is night and day from the newness standpoint to how much they had to be drinking from a fire hose last year. And that season ended with a Super Bowl anyway.
And it's why there is so much focus this year on who's the top-end wide receiver and what do the tackles look like when they're out there. Because a year ago, it was, what does the offense look like without Tyreek Hill? Patrick Mahomes, what's he going to look like without Tyreek Hill? And what's the defense look like with all of these younger players that are there? Yeah, you're getting deeper, but, man, you got a secondary that your veteran player is L'Jarius Sneed and then Rashad Fenton. Like, those are the guys that are going to be starting. And you've got new guy in Justin Reed. That was still a projection of here's what he did in Houston, but is that more because Houston sucks and you can't really take it to where this is the type of player and level of play he will give you because it was in Houston? So this is what he can do. This is what he'll do for the Chiefs. This is his skill set as to why it'll translate, and this is why it wasn't working with Houston. All of those were like projectable things, but not something that were necessarily knowns for this team. This year, the conversation is not about the defense or about the secondary. It's not about Patrick Mahomes and the offense, what it'll look like without Tyreek Hill. It's about who replaces Juju, because that's really the difference. Because last year was Juju and MVS and those guys. It's who replaces Juju and what does Donovan Smith look like at left tackle? Because, as I talked with Craig Stout in the 11 o'clock hour, and, that whole waffling between is Creed Humphrey underrated or not appreciated? Is he appreciated at the right degree? That whole thing. And his point, which was a good one, is that because it's sort of just a given that Tooney's that good and Creed's that good and Trey Smith's that good, he said it's almost like a set it and forget it. And we move on and talk about something else. Because then we don't go back and go, okay, I acknowledge Creed's awesome, Trey Smith's good, Joe Tooney's good. Now let's talk about some of the issues with this team. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the issues, but before we do that, I want to acknowledge Mahomes is great, Kelsey's great, Jones is great, the interior offensive line is amazing. Now let's get to some of the issues, because it is a set it and forget it. Those guys, you know what they're doing, you know what can be the case, you've seen it. There's no projection or question of what they can bring. And that's now the secondary this year for the Chiefs. And that's a vast difference from a year ago, just about what's Donovan Smith look like, what does Jawan Taylor look like, what does the wide receiver group look like now without a specific Tyreek Hill and then Juju.
And I think there are two different ways you can do like off-season roster talk, two kind of different axes you could focus on. And it's either, oh God, what's the floor? Or, ooh, interesting, what's the ceiling? And last year we were doing both, right?
Yeah, right.
Because there was a question of what is the floor of this defense? Because half of these dudes just got here. And this year, there's a little bit of a question about the floor of the number one receiver position and some question about the tackles. We just unknowns right now. But this offseason is going to be so much less stressful and so much more just pure exciting talking about the defense, because we haven't mentioned, if Frank Clark does come back, they could have 11 guys in their starting lineup who played with the team last year, again, depending on how that all gets shuffled around. But it's all upside too. There is so much less pressure on Felix this year than there was on Karlaftis last year, in part because now Karlaftis exists. He is in that category as one of the returning elements. And so you can have a fun conversation about a full year of Trent McDuffie being healthy, about, could Watson and Williams be even better going forward? It's a volatile position, but you don't really expect them to suddenly look out of sorts in year two. You're not looking for a drop off of any of these young 20-somethings who now have a year of experience. It is just a really exciting group to look at. And I don't know how far back you have to go to be genuinely just flat excited for a Chiefs defense. But I think you go a while, and I'm pretty excited to get too excited about that group and use it to make some real bold predictions in about a month.
I like that. You're excited to get too excited.
I am. I can see it coming.
Some text coming in, 913-912-4810. Text says, so we have Spags and now Nags.
Spags and Nags.
Well, Nags was saying this and Nags this and Nags that. This text, it's a good one. I appreciate this text. And the first text from this texter, too. So, this is a...
Good debut here.
Yes, this is efficiency.
World premiere.
Says, the answer when Spags was comfortable with the rookies, November 1st when they traded Rashad Fenton.
It's
a good point. I mean, it may not have been like fully, but there was a clear comfort organizationally.
Yep. Confidence in the guys.
And I think Spags would have to sign off on that.
Yeah.
If Spags said to Brett Veach, no, we have to have Rashad. It's not worth whatever you're going to get back for this year.
Yep.
Okay. Because that was the bye week. They had just beaten San Francisco. They had 2 losses, right? Yeah, I guess they had 3 last year. That one was Cincinnati later on. So the bye week came after San Francisco. They lost to the Bills, and then they traded Rashad Fenton on November 1st. So it's a great point that at least organizationally they felt comfortable with what they had in the secondary and what Watson and Williams was giving them, and then what they would get from McDuffie, who was still injured, right?
Yeah, I don't think he came
back after the bye.
Oh, yeah, and I think it may have been by a little bit even.
I thought he came back for Tennessee, maybe.
Maybe he did, but he missed. I think he ended up missing more than half the season ultimately,
I
right?
thought he missed like 6 games. I don't know.
I was thinking it was 8 or 9.
Eyes go cross.
I'm going to figure it out. We're going to find this before the end of the show. He played 11 games last year, so he missed 6.
So he came back for that.
Probably for that Titans game.
Titans game after the bye.
What do you know?
I don't know. No idea. No clue. It's a great point, though. Very efficient texter.
Really good point.
So
now, the pressure's on you, texter. You can't follow up with a crummy one.
Yeah, don't let us down now.
Upon further review here, Trent McDuffie missed weeks 2 through 7 and then returned for the Titans game. Just when someone said that, I wanted to go ahead and get that out there.
Was that after the bye week?
That was after the bye week, I believe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. How about that? I can't find this painting that's in the White House that was discovered in India. That was bought for like $7 by a couple in India, and it's worth like $300 million, like Justin Reed said. I was looking and looking. I could not find this anywhere. Somebody needs to figure out what this painting is. It's worth $300 million that was purchased for $7 in India. Maybe Petro will do that.
Era in Major League Baseball emerged in the early 2000s. On